Letter 83 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Cairo, July 17, 1866. Dearest Alick, I am perfectly comfortable now with my aquatic ménage. The Rais is very well behaved and steady and careful, and the sort of Caliban of a sailor is a very worthy savage. Omar, of course, is hard worked, what with going to market, cooking, cleaning, ironing, and generally keeping everything in nice order, but he won't hear of a maid of any sort. No wonder. A clever old Rais has just come and overhauled the bottom of the boat, and says he can mend her without taking her out of the water. We shall see. It will be great luck if he can. As I am the river doctor, all the sailoring men are glad to do me a civility. We have had the hottest of summers. It is now 98 degrees in the cabin. I have felt very unwell, but my blue devils are quite gone, and I am altogether better. What a miserable war it is in Europe! I am most anxious for the next papers. Here it is money misery. The Pasha is something like bankrupt, and no one has had a day's pay these 3 months. Even pensions of 60 piastres a month, 7 shillings, to poor old female slaves of Muhammad Ali's are stopped. August 4. The heat is and has been something fearful. We are all panting and puffing. I can't think what Palgrave meant about my being tired of poor old Egypt. I am very happy and comfortable, only I felt rather weak and poorly this year, and sometimes, I suppose, rather wakum, as the Arabs say, after you and the children. The heat, too, has made me lazy. It is 110 degrees in the cabin, and 96 at night. I saw the Moulid en Nebi, Festival of the Prophet, and the wonderful Dosa treading. It is an awful sight, so many men drunk with religious ardour. I also went to a Turkish harem, where my Darweesh friends sent me. It is just like a tea party at Hampton Court, only handsomer, not as to the ladies, but the clothes, furniture, and jewels, and not a bit like the description in Mrs. Lott's most extraordinary book. Nothing is so clean as a Turkish harem. The furniture is Dutch, as to cleanliness, and their persons only like themselves, but oh, how dull and triste it all seemed. One nice lady said to me, if I had a husband and children like thee, I would die 100 times rather than leave them for an hour. Another envied me the power of going into the street and seeing the Dosa. She had never seen it and never would. Tomorrow Olagnier will dine and spend the night here, to see the cutting of the canal and the Bride of the Nile on Monday morning. We shall sail up to Old Cairo in the evening with the bride's boat. Also Haji Hannah is coming for the fantasia. After the high Nile we shall take the boat out and caulk her, and then, if the excessive heat continues, I rather think of a month's jaunt to Beirut just to freshen me up. Haji Ali is there, with all his travelling materials and tents, so I need only take Omar and a bath and carpet bag. If the weather gets cool I shall stay in my boat. The heat is far more oppressive here than it was at Luxor 2 years ago. It is not so dry. The Viceroy is afraid of cholera, and worried the poor Hajis this year with most useless quarantine. The Mahmal was smuggled into Cairo before sunrise, without the usual honours, and all sightseers and holiday makers disappointed, and all good Muslims deeply offended. The idea that the Pasha has turned Christian or even Jew is spreading fast. I hear it on all sides. The new firman illegitimizing so many of his children is of course just as agreeable to a sincere Muslim as a law sanctioning polygamy for our royal family would be to us. End of Letter 83. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 84 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, off Boulak, August 20th, 1866. Dearest Alick, since I wrote I have had a bad bilious attack, which has, of course, aggravated my cough. Every one has had the same, and most far worse than I, but I was very wretched and most shamefully cross. Omar said, that is not you but the sickness, when I found fault with everything, and it was very true. I am still seedy. Also I am beyond measure exasperated about my boat. I went up to the Ata el Khalig cutting of the canal to see the great sight of the Bride of the Nile, a lovely spectacle, and on returning we all but sank. I got out into a boat of Zubayda's with all my goods, and we hauled up my boat and found her bottom rotten from stem to stern. So here am I in the midst of wood merchants, sawyers, etc., etc., rebuilding her bottom. My Rais said he had carried her on his head all this time, but what could such a one as he say against the word of a Hagawa, like Ross's storekeeper? When the English cheat each other there remains nothing but to seek refuge with God. Omar buys the wood and superintends, together with the Rais, and the builders seem good workmen and fair dealing. I pay day by day, and have a scribe to keep the accounts. If I get out of it for £150 I shall think Omar has done wonders, for every atom has to be new. I never saw anything so rotten afloat. If I had gone up the cataract I should never have come down alive. It is a marvel we did not sink long ago. Mabrook, Palgrave's boy, has arrived and turns out well. He is a stout, lubberly boy, with infinite good humour, and not at all stupid, and laughs a good real nigger yah, which brings the fresh breezes and lilac mountains of the Cape before me when I hear it. When I tell him to do anything he does it with strenuous care, and then asks Taib, is it well? And if I say yes he goes off, as Omar says, like a cannon in ladyship's face, in a guffaw of satisfaction. Achmet, who is half his size, orders him about and teaches him, with an air of extreme dignity, and says pityingly to me, "You see, O lady, he is quite new, quite green." Achmet, who had never seen a garment or any article of European life 2 years ago, is now a smart valet, with very distinct ideas of waiting at table, arranging my things, etc., and cooks quite cleverly. Arab boys are amazing. I have promoted him to wages, 1 Napoleon a month, so now he will keep his family. He is about a head taller than Rainey. I intend to write a paper on the various festivals and customs of Copts and Muslims, but I must wait to see Abu Seyfain, near Luxor, the great Christian saint, where all go to be cured of possession, all mad people. The Viceroy wages steady war against all festivals and customs. The Mahmal was burked this year, and the fair at Tanta forbidden. Then the Europeans spoil it all, the Arabs no longer go to the Atel el Khalig, and at the Dosa the Frangi carriages were like the Derby day. It is only up country that the real thing remains. To-morrow my poor black sheep will be killed over the new prow of the boat, his blood straked upon her, and his flesh sodden and eaten by all the workmen, to keep off the evil eye, and on the day she goes into the water some Fikis will read the Koran in the cabin, and again there will be boiled mutton and bread. The Christian ma'alimin, skilled workmen, hold to the ceremony of the sheep quite as much as the others, and always do it over a new house, boat, mill, water wheel, etc. Did I tell you Omar has another girl, about 2 months ago? His wife and babies are to come up from Alexandria to see him, for he will not leave me for a day, on account of my constantly being so ailing and weak. I hope if I die away from you all, you will do something for Omar for my sake. I cannot conceive what I should do without his faithful and loving care. I don't know why he is so devotedly fond of me, but he certainly does love me, as he says, like his mother, and moreover, as a very affectionate son loves his other. How pleasant it would be if you could come, but please don't run any risks of fatigue or exposure to cold on your return. If you cannot come I shall go to Luxor early in October and send back the boat to let. I hear from Luxor that the people are all running away from the land, unable to pay triple taxes and eat bread. The ruin is universal. The poor Sheikhs el Beled, who had the honour of dining with the Viceroy at Minia, have each had a squeeze politely administered. One poor devil I know had to make a present of 50 purses. How is my darling Rainey? I do so long for her earnest eyes at times, and I wonder if I shall ever be able to get back to you all again. I fear that breakdown at Soudan sent me down a great terrace. I have never lost the pain and the cough for a day since. I have not been out for an age, or seen anyone. Would you know the wife of your bosom in a pair of pink trousers and a Turkish tob? Such is my costume as I write. The woman who came to sew could not make a gown, so she made me a pair of trousers instead. Farewell, dearest, I hardly say how your hint of possibly coming has made me wish it, and yet I dread to persuade you. The great heat is quite over with the high Nile, and the air on the river fresh and cold at night even. End of letter 84. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 85 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff Gordon, off Boulak, August 27, 1866. Dearest Alick, your letter of the 18th has this moment arrived. I am very glad to hear you are so much better. I am still seedy-ish, but no worse. Everybody is liver sick this year. I give calomel and jalap all round, except to myself. The last 2 or 3 days we have been in great tribulation about the boat. On Saturday her ribs were finished, and the planking and caulking ready to be put on, when in the night up came the old Nile with a rush, and threatened to carry her off. But by the favour of Abul Hajjaj and Sheykh el Bastawi she was saved in this wise. You remember the tall old steersman who went with us to Bedrashane, and whom we thought so ill-conditioned. Well, he was in charge of a dahabeah close by, and he called up all the raises and steersmen to help. O men of el Bastawi, this is our boat, i.e. we are the servants of her owner, and she is in our faces, and then he set the example, stripped and carried dust and hammered in piles all night, and by the morning she was surrounded by a dyke breast high. The longshoremen of Balak were not a little surprised to see dignified raises working for nothing like fellaheen. Meanwhile my 3 ma'alimin, the chief builder, caulker and foreman, had also stayed all night with Omar and my rais, who worked like the rest, and the sheykh of all the boat builders went to visit every one of my ma'alimin, who is his nephew, and hearing the case came down too at 1 in the morning and stayed till dawn. Then, just as the workmen passed, going to their respective jobs, he called to them and said, "Come finish this boat, it must be done by tomorrow night." Some men who objected and said they were going to the Pasha's dockyard got a beating pro forma, and the end of it was that I found 46 men under my boat working like afrits and shaitans when I went to see how all was going in the morning. The old sheykh marked out a piece to each 4 men, and then said, "If that is not done tonight, O dogs, tomorrow I'll put on the hat," i.e. today I have beaten moderately like an Arab, but tomorrow, please God, I'll beat like a Frank and be mad with the stick. Kurz und gut, the boat which yesterday morning was a skeleton, is now, at 4 p.m. today, finished, caulked, pitched, and all capitally done. If the Nile carries off the dyke, she will float safe. The shore is covered with débris of other people's half-finished boats, I believe. I owe the ardour of the Ma'alims and of the Sheykh of the builders to one of my absurd pieces of Arab civility. On the day when Omar killed poor Abluk, my black sheep, over the bows and straked his blood upon them, the 3 Ma'alimin came on board this boat to eat their dish, and I followed the old Arab fashion and ate out of the wooden dish with them and the rais for luck, or rather for a blessing, as we say here, and it seems that this gave immense satisfaction. My rais wept at the death of the black sheep, which used to follow him to the coffee shop and the market, and was to him as a son, he said, but he ate of him nevertheless. Omar surreptitiously picked out the best pieces for my dinner for 3 days, with his usual eye to economy, then lighted a fire of old wood, borrowed a cauldron of some darweeshes, cut up the sheep, added water and salt, onions and herbs, and boiled the sheep. Then the big washing copper, a large, round, flat tray like a sponging bath, was filled with bread broken in pieces, over which the broth was slowly poured till the bread was soaked. Next came a layer of boiled rice, on the top of that the pieces of boiled meat, and over all was poured butter, vinegar, and garlic boiled together. This is called feta, and is the orthodox dish of darweeshes, and given at all khatmas and other semi-religious, semi-festive, semi-charitable festivals. It is excellent and not expensive. I asked how many had eaten, and was told 130 men had blessed my hand. I expended 160 piastres on bread, butter, vinegar, etc., and the sheep was worth 2 napoleons, 3 napoleons in all, or less, for I ate for 2 days of the mutton. The 3 Ma'alims came on board this boat, as I said, and ate, and it was fine to hear us, how polite we were. A bit more, O Ma'alim? Praise be to God we have eaten well, we will return to our work. By the Prophet, coffee and a pipe. Truly thou art of the most noble people. O Ma'alim, ye have honoured us and rejoiced with us. Verily, this is a day white among days, etc. A very clever Egyptian engineer, a pupil of Whitworth's, who is living in a boat alongside mine, was much amused, and said, "Ah, you know how to manage them." I have learnt the story of the 2 dead bodies that hitched in my anchor chain some time ago. They were not Europeans as I thought, but Circassians, a young man and his mother. The mother used to take him to visit an officer's wife who had been brought up in the hareem of the Pasha's mother. The husband caught them, killed them, tied them together and flung them into the Nile near Rhoda, and gave himself into the hands of the police. All was of course hushed up. He goes to Fazoghlou, and I don't know what becomes of the slave girl, his wife. These sorts of things happen every day, as the bodies testify, among the Turks, but the Europeans never hear it. I heard it by a curious chance. September 4. My boat will soon be finished, and now will be as good as new. Omar has worked like a good one from daybreak till night, overlooking, buying all the materials, selling all the old wood and iron, etc., and has done capitally. I shall take a paper from my ma'alims, who are all first-class men, to certify what they have done that the boat is as good as new. Goodah Effendi has kindly looked at her several times for me, and highly approves the work. I never saw men do a better day's work than those at the boat. It is pretty to see the carpenter holding the wood with one hand and one foot while he saws it, sitting on the ground, just like the old frescoes. Do you remember the picture of boat building in the tomb at Saqqara? Well, it is just the same, all done with the adze, but it is stout work they put into it, I can tell you. If you do not come, and I do not like to press you, I fear the fatigue for you and the return to the cold winter, I shall go to Luxor in a month or so, and send back the boat to let. I have a neighbour now, Goodah Effendi, an engineer, who studied and married in England. His wife is gone there with the children, and he is living in a boat close by, so he comes over of an evening very often, and I am glad of his company. He is a right good fellow and very intelligent. My best love to all at home. I've got a log from the cedars of Lebanon. My Muslim carpenter, who smoothed the broken end, swallowed the sawdust, because he believed Our Lady Mary had sat under the tree with our Lord Jesus. End of letter 85. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 86 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, off Boulak, September 21st, 1866. I am better now, and go on very comfortably with my two little boys. Omar is, from dawn till night, at work at my boat, so I have only Mabrook and Achmet, and you would wonder to see how well I am served. Achmet cooks a very good dinner, and serves it and orders Mabrook about. Sometimes I whistle and hear Haider ready from the water, and in tumbles Achmet, with the water running down his innocent nose and looking just like a little bronze Triton of a Renaissance fountain, with a blue shirt and white skull-cap added. Mabrook is a big lubberly lad of the laugh and grow fat breed, clumsy but not stupid, and very good and docile. You would delight in his guffaws, and the merry games and hearty laughter of my ménage is very pleasant to me. Another boy swims over from Goodah's boat, his Achmet, and then there are games at piracy, and much stealing of red pots from the potters' boats. The joke is to snatch one under the owner's very nose, and swim off brandishing it, whereupon the boatman uses eloquent language, and the boys out-hector him, and everybody is much amused. I only hope Palgrave won't come back from Sukum Kala and fetch Mabrook, just as he has got clever, not at stealing jars, but in his work. He already washes my clothes very nicely indeed. His stout black arms are made for a washer-boy. Achmet looked forward with great eagerness to your coming. He is mad to go to England, and in his heart planned to ingratiate himself with you, and go as a general servant. He is very little, if at all, bigger than a child of 7, but an Arab boy ne doute de rien, and does serve admirably. What would an English respectable cook say to seeing 2 dishes and a sweet, cooked over a little old wood on a few bricks, by a baby in a blue shirt, and very well cooked too, and followed by incomparable coffee? You will be pleased to hear that your capital story of the London cabman has its exact counterpart here. O gracious God, what aileth thee, O Achmet my brother, and why is thy bosom contracted, that thou hast not once said to me, Damn thy father, or son of a dog or pig, as thou art used to do? Can't you save up your holidays, and come for 4 months next winter with my Maurice? However, perhaps you would be bored on the Nile, I don't know. People either enjoy it rapturously, or are bored, I believe. I am glad to hear from Janet that you are well. I am much better. The carpenter will finish in the boat today, then the painter begins, and in a week, inshallah, I shall get back to her. End of Letter 86. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 87 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Mrs. Austen, off Bulak, September 21st, 1866. Dearest Mother, I am a good deal better again. The weather is delightful, and the Nile in full flood, which makes the river scenery from the boat very beautiful. Alick made my mouth water with his description of his rides with Janet about the dear old Surrey country. Having her with him seems to have quite set him up. I have seen nothing and nobody but my next boat neighbour, Goodah Effendi, as Omar has been at work all day in the boat, and I felt lazy and disinclined to go out alone. Big Hassan of the donkeys has grown too lazy to go about, and I don't care to go alone with a small boy here. However, I am out in the best of air all day, and am very well off. My two little boys are very diverting and serve me very well. The news from Europe is to my ignorant ideas désolant, a dégringolade back into military despotism, which would have excited indignation with us in our fathers' days, I think. I get lots of newspapers from Ross, which afterwards go to an Arab grocer, who reads the Times and the Saturday Review in his shop in the bazaar. What next? The cargo of books which Alick and you sent will be most acceptable for winter consumption. If I were a painter, I would take up the Muslim traditions of Mary and Joseph. He was not a white-bearded old gentleman at all, you must know, but young, lovely, and pure as Our Lady herself. They were cousins, brought up together, and she avoided the light conversation of other girls, and used to go to the well with her jar, hand in hand with Joseph carrying his. After the angel Gabriel had announced to her the will of God, and blown into her sleeve, whereby she conceived the Spirit of God, Joseph saw her state with dismay, and resolved to kill her, as was his duty as her nearest male relation. He followed her, knife in hand, meaning always to kill her at the next tree, and each time his heart failed him, until they reached the well and the tree under which the divine messenger stood once more and said, Fear not, O Joseph, the daughter of thy uncle bears within her Isa, the Messiah, the Spirit of God. Joseph married his cousin without fear. Is it not pretty? Two types of youthful purity and piety, standing hand in hand before the angel. I think a painter might make something out of the soft-eyed Syrian boy with his jar on his shoulder, hers on the head, and the grave, modest maiden who shrank from all profane company. I now know all about Sheikh Salim, and why he sits naked on the river bank, from a very high authority, a great sheikh to whom it has been revealed. He was entrusted with the care of some of the holy she-camels, like that on which the Prophet rode to Jerusalem in one night, and which are invisible to all but the elect, and he lost one, and now he is God's prisoner till she is found. A letter from Aunt Charley all about her own and Rainie's country life, school feasts, etc., made me quite cry, and brought before me, oh, how vividly, the difference between East and West, not quite all to the advantage of home, however, though mostly. What is pleasant here is the primitive ways. 3 times since I have been here lads of most respectable families of Luxor have come to ask hospitality, which consists in a place on the deck of the boat, and liberty to dip their bread in the common dish with my slave boy and Achmet. The bread they brought with them, bread and shelter, were not asked, as they slept sub dio. In England I must have refused the hospitality, on account of Jean and expense. The chief object to the lads was the respectability of being under my eye while away from their fathers, as a satisfaction to their families, and while they ate and slept like beggars, as we should say, they read their books and chatted with me, while I was out on deck, on perfectly equal terms, only paying the respect proper to my age. I thought of the orphanages and institutions, and all the countless difficulties of that sort, and wondered whether something was not to be said for this absence of civilization in knives, forks, beds, beer, and first and second tables above all. Of course climate has a good deal to do with the facility with which widows and orphans are absorbed here. Good-bye, dearest Mother. Today is post day, and Rais Mohammed is about to trudge into town in such a darling white turban and such a grand black robe. His first wife, whom he was going to divorce for want of children, has brought him a son, and we jeer him a little about what he may find in Luxor from the second, and wish him a couple of dozen. End of Letter 87. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 88 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Cairo, October 15, 1866. Dearest Alec, I have been back in my own boat 4 days, and most comfortable she is. I enlarged the saloon, and made a good writing table, and low, easy divans instead of benches, and added a sort of pantry and sleeping cabin in front, so that Omar has not to come through the saloon to sleep, and I have all the harem part to myself. Inside there is a good large stern cabin and wash closet and 2 small cabins with beds, long enough even for you. Inshallah, you and Maurice will come next winter and go up the Nile and enjoy it with me. I intend to sail in 10 days and to send back the Urania to seek work for the winter. We had a very narrow escape of being flooded this year. I fear a good deal of damage has been done to the doura and cotton crops. It was sad to see the villagers close by here trying to pull up a little green doura as the Nile slowly swallowed up the fields. I was forced to flog Mabrook yesterday for smoking on the sly, a grave offence here on the part of a boy. It is considered disrespectful, so he was ordered with much parade to lie down, and Omar gave him 2 cuts with a rope's end, an apology for a flogging which would have made an Eton boy stare. The stick here is quite nominal, except in official hands. I can't say Mabrook seemed at all impressed, for he was laughing heartily with Omar in less than 10 minutes, but the affair was conducted with as much solemnity as an execution. Sheikh Stanley's friend, Gezawi, has married his negro slave to his own sister, on the plea that he was the best young man he knew. What would a Christian family say to such an arrangement? My boat is beautifully buoyant now, and has come up by the bows in fine style. I have not sailed her yet, but have no doubt she will walk well, as the Arabs say. Omar got £10 by the sale of old wood and nails, and also gave me 2,000 piastres, nearly £12, which the workmen had given him as a sort of bakshish. They all pay 1, 2, or 3 piastres daily to any wakeel agent who superintends. That is his profit, and it is enormous at that rate. I said, why did you not refuse it? But Omar replied they had pay enough after that reduction, which is always made from them, and that in his opinion therefore it came out of the master's pocket, and was cheatery. How people have been talking nonsense about Jamaica chez vous. I have little doubt Eyre did quite right, and still less doubt that the niggers have had enough of the sort of provocation which I well know to account for the outbreak. Baker's effusion is a poor business. There may be blacks like tigers, and whites too in London for that matter. I myself have seen at least 5 sorts of blacks, negroes, not Arabs, more unlike each other than Swedes are unlike Spaniards, and many are just like ourselves. Of course they want governing with a strong hand, like all ignorant childish creatures, but I am fully convinced that custom and education are the only real differences between one set of men and another. Their inner nature is all the same the world over. My Rais spoke a pretty parable the other day that I must needs write it. A Coptic Rais stole some of my wood, which we got back by force, and there was some reviling of the Nazarenes in consequence from Hussein and Ali, but Rais Mohammed said, not so, Girgis is a thief, it is true, but many Christians are honest, and behold, all the people in the world are like soldiers, some wear red and some blue, some serve on foot, others on horseback, and some in ships, but all serve one sultan, and each fights in the regiment in which the sultan has placed him, and he who does his duty best is the best man, be his coat red or blue or black. I said, excellent words, O Rais, and fit to be spoken from the best of pulpits. It is surprising what happy sayings the people here hit upon. They cultivate talk for want of reading, and the consequence is great facility of narration and illustration. Everybody enforces his ideas like Christ in parables. Haji Hannah told me 2 excellent fairy tales, which I will write for Rainey with some bowdlerizing, and several laughable stories, which I will leave unrecorded, as savouring too much of Boccaccio's manner, or that of the Queen of the Navarre. I told Achmet to sweep the floor after dinner just now. He hesitated, and I called him again. What manner is this, not to sweep when I bid thee? By the Most High God, said the boy, my hand shall not sweep in thy boat after sunset, O lady. I would rather have it cut off than sweep thee out of thy property. I found that you must not sweep at night, nor for 3 days after the departure of a guest whose return you desire, or the master of the house. Thinkest thou that my brother would sweep away the dust of thy feet from the floors at Luxor?" continued Achmet. "He would fear never to see thy fortunate face again. If you don't want to see your visitor again, you break a gullah (water jar) behind him as he leaves the house, and sweep away his footsteps. What a canard your papers have in Europe about a constitution here! I don't write any politics, it is all too dreary, and Cairo gossip is odious, as you may judge by the productions of Mesdames Odard and Lot. Only remember this, there is no law nor justice but the will or rather the caprice of one man. It is nearly impossible for any European to conceive such a state of things as really exists. Nothing but perfect familiarity with the governed, i.e. oppressed, class will teach it. However intimate a man may be with the rulers he will never fully take it in. I am à Londox here, and none of the people I know dare to come see me, Arab I mean. It was whispered in my ear in the street by a friend I met. Ismail Pasha's chief pleasure is gossip, and a certain number of persons, chiefly Europeans, furnish him with it daily, true or false. If the farce of the Constitution ever should be acted here it will be superb. Something like the consul going in state to ask the fellaheen what wages they got. I could tell you a little of the value of consular information, but what is the use? Europe is enchanted with the enlightened Pasha who has ruined this fine country. I long to see you in Rainey. I don't like to hope too much, but inshallah next year I shall see you all. End of letter 88. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 89 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, off Boulak, October 19, 1866. I shall soon sail up the river. Yesterday Said Mustapha arrived, who says that the Greeks are all gone, and the poor Austrian at Thebes is dead, so I shall represent Europe in my single person from Siout to, I suppose, Khartoum. You would delight in Maybrook. A man asked him the other day, after his flogging, if he would not run away, to see what he would say, as alleged, I suspect he meant, to steal and sell him. I run away, to eat lentils like you, when my Effendi gives me meat and bread every day, and I eat such a lot? Is not that a delicious, practical view of liberty? The creature's enjoyment of life is quite a pleasure to witness, and he really works very well and with great alacrity. If Palgrave claims him, I think I must buy him. I hear sad accounts from the Saeed, the new taxes and the new levies of soldiers are driving the people to despair, and many are running away from the land, which will no longer feed them after paying all exactions, to join the Bedaween in the desert, which is just as if our peasantry turned gypsies. A man from Dishne visited me. The people there want me to settle in their village, and offer me a voluntary corvée if I will buy land, so many men to work for me 2 days a month each. I haven't a conception why. It is a place about 50 miles below Luxor, a large agricultural village. Omar's wife Mabruka came here yesterday, a nice young woman, and the babies are fine children and very sweet-tempered. She told me that the lion's head, which I sent down to Alexandria to go to you, was in her room when a neighbour of hers, who had never had a child, saw it, and at once conceived. The old image worship survives in the belief, which is all over Egypt, that the antiques (antiquities) can cure barrenness. Mabruka was of course very smartly dressed, and the reckless way in which Eastern women treat their fine clothes gives them a grand air, which no Parisian duchess could hope to imitate. Not that I think it a virtue, mind you, but some vices are genteel. Last night was a great sheikh's fête, such drumming and singing and ferrying across the river. The Nile is running down unusually fast, and I think I had better go soon, as the mud of Cairo is not so sweet as the mud of the upper land. End of letter 89. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 90 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Mrs. Austen, off Boulak, October 25th, 1866. Dearest Mutter, I have got all ready, and shall sail on Saturday. My men have baked the bread, and received their wages to go to Luxor and bring the boat back to let. It is turning cold, but I feel none the worse for it, though I shall be glad to go. I've had a dreary, worrying time here, and am tired of hearing all the meanness and wickedness which constitute the on dit here. Not that I hear much, but there is nothing else. I shall be best at Luxor now the winter has set in so early. You would laugh at such winter when one sits out all day under an awning in English summer clothes, and wants only 2 blankets at night, but all is comparative ici-bas, and I call it cold, and Maybrook ceases to consider his clothes such a grievance as they were to him at first, and takes kindly to a rough capote for the night. I have just been interrupted by my Rais and one of my men, who came in to display the gorgeous printed calico they have bought, one for his Luxor wife and the other for his betrothed up near Aswan. The latter is about 8 years old, and Hussein has dressed her and paid her expenses these 5 years, as is the custom up in that district. The Rais has bought a silk handkerchief for 9 shillings, but that was in the marriage contract. So I must see and admire and wish good luck to the finery, and to the girls who are to wear it. Then we had a little talk about the prospects of letting the boat, and, inshallah, making some money for El Gama, i.e. all our company or all of us together. The Rais hopes that the Hogawat will not be too outrageous in their ways, or given to use the stick, as the solution of every difficulty. The young Sharifa of Abul Hajjaj came from Gamal Asr today to bid me good-bye and bring their letters for Luxor. I asked them about the rumours that the Ulema are preaching against the Franks, which is always being said, but they had heard nothing of the sort, and said they had not heard of anything the Franks had done lately which would signify to the Muslims at all. It is not the Franks who press so many soldiers, or levy such heavy taxes 3 months in advance. I will soon write again. I feel rather like the wandering Jew and long for home and rest, without being dissatisfied with what I have, and enjoy, God knows. If I could get better and come home next summer. End of letter 90. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 91 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Luxor, November 21st, 1866. Dearest Alec, I arrived here on the morning of the 11th. I am a beast not to have written, but I caught cold after 4 days, and have really not been well, so forgive me, and I will narrate and not apologize. We came up best pace, as the boat is a flyer now, only 14 days to Thebes, and to Kenna only 11. Then we had bad winds, and my men pulled away at the rope, and sang the Rais al Rusa, bridegroom going to his bride, and even Omar went and pulled the rope. We were all very merry, and played practical jokes on a rascal who wanted £1 to guide me to the tombs. We made him run miles, fetch innumerable donkeys, and then laughed at his beard. Such is boatman fun. On arriving at Luxor I had a charivari of voices, and I knew I was at home, by the shrill pipe of the little children, El Sit, El Sit. Visitors all day of course, at night comes up another dahabiah, great commotion, as it had been telegraphed from Cairo, which I knew before I left, and was to be stopped. So I coolly said, O Mustapha, the Indian saint, Wali, is in thine eye, seeing that an Indian is all as one with an Englishman. How did I know there was an Indian and a Wali, etc. Meanwhile the Wali had a bad thumb, and someone told his slave there was a wonderful English doctress, so in the morning he sent for me, and I went inside the harem. He was very friendly, and made me sit close beside him, told me he was 4th in descent from Abd el-Qadir Gilami of Baghdad, but his father settled at Hyderabad, where he has great estates. He said he was a Wali or saint, and would have it that I was on the path of the Darwishes, gave me medicine for my cough, asked me many questions, and finally gave me $5 and asked if I wanted more. I thanked him heartily, kissed the money politely, and told him I was not poor enough to want it, and would give it in his name to the poor of Luxor, but that I would never forget that the Indian sheykh had behaved like a brother to an Englishwoman in a strange land. He then spoke in great praise of the laws of the English, and said many more kind things to me, adding again, "I tell thee thou art a darweesh, and do not forget me." Another Indian from Lahore, I believe the Sheikh's tailor, came to see me, an intelligent man, and a Syrian doctor, a manifest scamp. The people here said he was balawar, rope dancer. Well, the authorities detained the boat with fair words till orders came from Keneh to let them go up further. Meanwhile the Sheykh came out and performed some miracles, which I was not there to see, perfuming people's hands by touching them with his, and taking English sovereigns out of a pocketless jacket, and the doctor told wonders of him. Anyhow, he spent £10 in one day here, and he is a regular darweesh. He and all the hareem were poorly dressed, and wore no ornaments whatever. I hope Said Abdurrahman will come down safe again, but no one knows what the government wants of him or why he is so watched. It is the first time I ever saw an Oriental travelling for pleasure. He had about 10 or 12 in the hareem, among them his 3 little girls, and perhaps 20 men outside, Indians and Arabs from Syria, I fancy. Next day I moved into the old house, and found one end in ruins, owing to the high Nile and want of repair. However, there is plenty more safe and comfortable. I settled all accounts with my men, and made an inventory in Arabic, which Sheykh Yussuf wrote for me, which we laughed over hugely. How to express a sauce-boat, a pie-dish, etc., in Arabic was a poser. A genteel effendi who sat by at last burst out in uncontrollable amazement, "There is no God but God! Is it possible that 4 or 5 Franks can use all these things to eat, drink, and sleep on a journey?" N.B. I fear the Franks will think the stock very scanty. Whereupon Master Achmet, with the swagger of one who has seen cities and men, held forth, "Oh, Effendim, that is nothing. Our Lady is almost like the children of the Arabs. 1 dish or 2, a piece of bread, a few dates, and peace, as we say, there is an end of it. But thou shouldst see the merchants of Escandria (Alexandria), 3 tablecloths, 40 dishes, to each soul 7 plates of all sorts, 7 knives and 7 forks and 7 spoons, large and small, and 7 different glasses for wine and beer and water." "It is the will of God," replied the Effendi, rather put down, "but," he added, "it must be a dreadful fatigue to them to eat their dinner." Then came an impudent merchant who wanted to go down with his bales and 5 souls in my boat for nothing. But I said, "Oh man, she is my property, and I will eat from her of thy money as of the money of the Franks." Whereupon he offered £1, but was bundled out amid general reproaches for his avarice and want of shame. So all the company said a Fatah for the success of the voyage, and Rais Mohammed was exhorted to open his eyes, and he should have a tarboosh if he did well. Then I went to visit my kind friend the Maōhn's wife, and tell her all about her charming daughter and grandchildren. I was, of course, an hour in the streets salaaming, etc. "Sharaftina Beledna, thou hast honoured our country on all sides. Blessings come with thee," etc. Everything is cheaper than last year, but there is no money to buy with, and the taxes have grown beyond bearing, as a fellow said, "A man can't," we will express it, "blow his nose, if you please," the real phrase was less parliamentary, and expressive of something at once ventose and valueless, without a kawas behind him to levy a tax on it. The ha'porth of onions we buy in the market is taxed on the spot, and the fish which the man catches under my window. I paid a tax on buying charcoal, and another on having it weighed. People are terribly beaten to get next year's taxes out of them, which they have not the money to pay. The Nubian M.P.s passed the other day in 3 boats, towed by a steamer, very frightened and sullen. I fell in with some Egyptians on my way, and tried to talk the European style of talk. "Now you will help to govern the country, what a fine thing for you," etc. I got such a look of rueful reproach. "Laugh not thou at our beards, O Effendim! God's mercy, what words are these? And who is there on the banks of the Nile who can say anything but Hydir, ready, with both hands on the head, and a salaam to the ground even to a mutter, and thou talkest of speaking before Effendina? Art thou mad, Effendim?" Of all the vexations, none are more trying than the distinctions which have been inflicted on the unlucky Sheikhs el Beled. In fear and trembling they ate their Effendina's banquet, and sadly paid the bill, and those who have had the Nishan, the order of the Majidi, have had to disburse fees whereat the Lord Chamberlain's staff's mouths might water, and now the wretched delegates to the European Chambers, God save the mark, are going down with their hearts in their shoes. The Nubians say that the divan is to be held in the citadel, and that the road by which the Memluk Beys left it is not stopped up, though perhaps it goes underground nowadays. November 27th. The first steamer full of travellers has just arrived, and with it the brother of the ladies, all wanting my saddle. I forbade Mustapha to send for it, but they intimidate the poor old fellow, and he comes and kisses my hand, not to get him into trouble with one old woman, who says she is the relation of a consul and a great lady in her own country. I am what Mrs. Grote called cake enough to concede to Mustapha's fears what I had sworn to refuse henceforth. Last year 5 women on one steamer all sent for my saddle, besides other things, camp stools, umbrellas, beer, etc., etc. This year I'll bolt the doors when I see a steamer coming. I hear the big people are so angry with the Indian saint because he treated them like dirt everywhere. One great man went with a mudir to see him, and asked him to sell him a memluk, a young slave boy. The Indian, who had not spoken or saluted, burst forth, "Be silent, thou wicked one! Dost thou dare to ask me to sell thee a soul to take it with thee to hell?" Fancy the surprise of the distinguished Turk. Never had he heard such language. The story has travelled all up the river, and is of course much enjoyed. Last night Sheykh Yussuf gave an entertainment, killed a sheep, and had a reading of the Sirat el-Rasul, chapter on the Prophet. It was the night of the Prophet's great vision, and is a great night in Islam. I was sorry not to be well enough to go. Now that there is no Kadi here, Sheykh Yussuf has lots of business to settle, and he came to me and said, "Expound to me the laws of marriage and inheritance of the Christians, that I may do no wrong in the affairs of the Copts, for they won't go and be settled by the priest out of the Gospels, and I can't find any laws, except about marriage, in the Gospels." I set him up with the text of the tribute money, and told him to judge according to his own laws, for that Christians had no laws other than those of the country they lived in. Poor Yussuf was sore perplexed about a divorce case. I refused to expound, and told him all the learned in the law in England had not yet settled which text to follow. Do you remember the German story of the lad who travelled das Grüseln zu lernen? Well, I, who never gruselt before, had a touch of it a few evenings ago. I was sitting here quietly drinking tea, and 4 or 5 men were present when a cat came to the door. I called bis, bis, and offered milk, but Pussy, after looking at us, ran away. "Well dost thou, O lady," said a quiet sensible man, a merchant here, "to be kind to the cat, for I dare say he gets little enough at home. His father, poor man, cannot cook for his children every day." And then, in an explanatory tone to the company, "That is Ali Naseri's boy Yussuf. It must be Yussuf, because his fellow twin Ismaeen is with his mule at Negeda." Mere gruselte, I confess, not but what I have heard things almost as absurd from gentlemen and ladies in Europe, but an extravagance in a kuftan has quite a different effect from one in a tailcoat. "What, my butcher's boy who brings the meat, a cat?" I gasped. "To be sure, and he knows well where to look for a bit of good cookery, you see. All twins go out as cats at night if they go to sleep hungry, and their own bodies lie at home, like dead, meanwhile, but no one must touch them or they would die. When they grow up to 10 or 12 they leave it off. Why, your boy Achmet does it. Oh, Achmet, do you go out as a cat at night?" "No," said Achmet tranquilly, "I am not a twin. My sister's sons do." I inquired if people were not afraid of such cats. "No, there is no fear, they only eat a little of the cookery, but if you beat them they will tell their parents next day, 'So and so beat me in his house last night,' and show their bruises. No, they are not Afrits, they are Beni Adam, sons of Adam. Only twins do it, and if you give them a sort of onion broth and camel's milk the first thing when they are born, they don't do it at all." Omar professed never to have heard of it, but I am sure he had, only he dreads being laughed at. One of the American missionaries told me something like it, as belonging to the Copts, but it is entirely Egyptian, and common to both religions. I asked several Copts who assured me it was true, and told just the same. Is it a remnant of the doctrine of transmigration? However, the notion fully accounts for the horror people feel at the idea of killing a cat. A poor pilgrim from the Black Country was taken ill yesterday at a village 6 miles from here. He could speak only a few words of Arabic, and begged to be carried to the Ababda. So the Sheykh el Beled put him on a donkey and sent him and his little boy, and laid him in Sheykh Hassan's house. He called for Hassan and begged him to take care of the child, and to send him to an uncle somewhere in Cairo. Hassan said, "Oh, you will get well, inshallah, etc., and take the boy with you." "I cannot take him into the grave with me," said the black pilgrim. Well, in the night he died, and the boy went to Hassan's mat and said, "Oh Hassan, my father is dead." So the two sheikhs and several men got up and went and sat with the boy till dawn, because he refused to lie down or to leave his father's corpse. At daybreak he said, "Take me now and sell me, and buy new cloth to dress my father for the tomb." All the Ababda cried when they heard it, and Hassan went and bought the cloth, and some sweet stuff for the boy who remains with him. Such is death on the road in Egypt. I tell it as Hassan's slave told it to me, and somehow we all cried again at the poor little boy rising from his dead father's side to say, "Come now, sell me to dress my father for the tomb." These strange black pilgrims always interest me. Many take 4 years to Mecca and home, and have children born to them on the road, and learn a few words of Arabic. End of Letter 91. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 92 of Letters from Egypt. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Mrs. Ross, Luxor, December 5, 1866. Dearest Janet, I write in answer to yours by the steamer, to go down by the Seine. I fancy I should be quite of your mind about Italy. I hate the return of Europe to the good old rule and ancient plan, that he should take who has the power, and he should keep who can. Nor can I be bullied into looking on might as right. Many thanks for the papers. I am anxious to hear about the Candia business. All my neighbours are sick at heart. The black boy Palgrave left with me is a very good lad, only he can't keep his clothes clean, never having been subject to that annoyance before. He has begun to be affectionate ever since I did not beat him for breaking my only looking-glass. I wish an absurd respect for public opinion did not compel him to wear a blue shirt and a tarbouche, his suit. I see it is misery to him. He is a very gentle cannibal. I have been very unwell indeed, and still am extremely weak, but hope I am on the mend. A eunuch here who is a holy man tells me he saw my boat coming up heavily laden in his sleep, which indicates a good let. I hope my reverend friend is right. If you sell any of your things when you leave Egypt, let me have some blankets for the boat. If she is let to a friendly dragoman, he will supply all deficiencies out of his own canteen, but, if to one who knows not Joseph, I fear many things will be demanded by right-minded British travellers, which must be left to the Rais's discretion to buy for them. I hope all the Fatah said for the success of the Urania's voyage will produce a due effect. Here we rely a good deal on the favour of Abul Hajjaj in such matters. The naivete with which people pray here for money is very amusing, though really I don't know why one shouldn't ask for one's daily sixpence as well as one's daily bread. An idiot of a woman has written me to get her a place as governess in an European or Arabian family in the neighbourhood of Thebes. Considering she has been 6 years in Egypt as she says, she must be well fitted to teach. She had better learn to make gilla and spin wool. The young Americans whom Mr. Hale sent were very nice. The Yankees are always the best bred and educated travellers that I see here. End of Letter 92. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 93 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Luxor, December 31st, 1866. Dearest Alec, I meant to have sent you a long yarn by a steamer which went the other day, but I have been in my bed. The weather set in colder than I ever felt it here, and I have been very unwell for some time. Dr. Osman Ibrahim, a friend of mine, an elderly man who studied in Paris in Muhammad Ali's time, wants me to spend the summer up here and take sand baths, i.e., bury myself up to the chin in the hot sand, and to get a Dongola slave to rub me. A most fascinating dervish from Esneh gave me the same advice. He wanted me to go and live near him at Esneh, and let him treat me. I wish you could see Sheikh Selim. He is a sort of remnant of the Memluk Beys, a Circassian who has inherited his master's property up at Esneh, and married his master's daughter. The master was one of the Beys, also a slave inheriting from his master. Well, after being a terrible shaitan after drink, women, etc., Selim has repented and become a man of pilgrimage and prayer and perpetual fasting, but he has retained the exquisite grace and charm of manner which must have made him irresistible in his shaitan days, and also the beautifully delicate style of dress, a dove-coloured cloth sibba over a pale blue silk kaftan, a turban like a snowdrift, under which flowed the silky fair hair and beard, and the dainty white hands under the long muslin shirt-sleeve made a picture, and such a smile, and such ready graceful talk. Sheikh Yussuf brought him to me as a sort of doctor, and also to try and convert me on one point. Some Christians had made Yussuf quite miserable, by telling him of the doctrine that all unbaptized infants went to eternal fire, and, as he knew that I had lost a child very young, it weighed on his mind that perhaps I fretted about this, and so he could not refrain from trying to convince me that God was not so cruel and unjust as the Nazarene priests represented him, and that all infants whatsoever, as well as ignorant persons, were to be saved. Would that I could take the cruel error out of the minds of all the hundreds and thousands of poor Christian mothers who must be tortured by it, said he, and let them understand that their dead babies are with him who sent and took them. I own I did not resent this interference with my orthodoxy, especially as it is the only one I ever knew Yussuf to attempt. Dr. Osman is a lecturer in the Cairo School of Medicine, a sherif, and eminently a gentleman. He came up in the passenger steamer and called on me and spent all his spare time with me. I liked him better than the bewitching dervish Selim. He is so like my old love Don Quixote. He was amazed and delighted at what he heard here about me. Ah, madame, on vous aimait comme une sœur, et on vous respectait comme une reine. Cela réjouit la cour des honnêtes gens de voir tous les préjugés oubliés et détruits à ce point. We had no end of talk. Osman is the only Arab I know who has read a good deal of European literature and history, and is able to draw comparisons. He said, Vous seul dans toute l'Égypte connaissez le peuple et comprenez ce qui s'y passe. Tous les autres Européens ne savent absolument rien que les héros. Il n'y a que vous qui ayez inspiré la confiance qu'il faut pour connaître la vérité. Of course, this is between ourselves, I tell you, but I don't want to boast of the kind thoughts people have of me, simply because I am decently civil to them. In Egypt we are eaten up with taxes. There is not a penny left to anyone. The taxes for the whole year 8 months in advance have been levied, as far as they can be beaten out of the miserable people. I saw one of the poor dancing girls the other day, there are 3 in Luxor, and she told me how cruel the new tax on them is. It is left to the discretion of the official who farms it to make each woman pay according to her presumed gains, i.e., her good looks, and thus the poor women are exposed to all the caprices and extortions of the police. This last new tax has excited more disgust than any. We now know the name of our ruler, said a fellow who had just heard of it. He is Mawash Pasha. I won't translate, but it is a terrible epithet when uttered in a tone which gives it the true meaning, though in a general way the commonest word of abuse to a donkey or a boy or to any other cattle. The wages of prostitution are unclean, and this tax renders all government salaries unlawful according to strict law. The capitation tax, too, which was remitted for 3 years on the Pasha's accession to the people of Cairo, Alexandria, Damietta, and Rashid, is now called for. Omar will have to pay about £8 back tax, which he had fondly imagined himself excused from. You may conceive the distress this must cause among artisans, etc., who have spent their money and forgotten it, and feel cheated out of the blessings they then bestowed on the Pasha. As to that, they will take out the change in curses. There was a meeting here the other day of the Cadi, Sheikh el Beled, and other notables to fix the amount of tax each man was to pay towards the increased police tax, and the old Sherif at the end spoke up, and said he had heard that one man had asked me to lend him money, and that he hoped such a thing would not happen again. Everyone knew I had heavy expenses this year, and most likely had not much money, that my heart was soft, and that as everyone was in distress it would be breaking my head, and in short, that he should think it unmanly if anyone tried to trouble a lone woman with his troubles. I did offer one man £2 that he might not be forced to run away to the desert, but he refused it, and said, I had better go at once and rob out there, and not turn rogue against thee. Never could I repay it. The people are running away in all directions. When the Moolid of the Sheykh came, the whole family Abul Hajjaj could only raise 620 piastres among them to buy the buffalo cow, which by custom, strong as the laws of the Medes and Persians, must be killed for the strangers who come, and a buffalo cow is worth 1,000 piastres. So the stout old Sherif, aged 87, took his staff and the 620 piastres, and sallied forth to walk to Erment and see what God would send them, and a charitable woman in Erment did give a buffalo cow for the 620 piastres, and he drove her home the 20 miles rejoicing. There has been a burglary over at Gerna, an unheard of event. Some men broke into the house of the Coptic Gabit, tax gatherer, and stole the money box containing about 60 purses, over £150. The Gabit came to me sick with the fright which gave him jaundice, and about 8 men are gone in chains to Kenna on suspicion. Haji Baba, too, a Turkish Kawas, is awfully bilious. He says he is sick from beating men, and it's no use, you can't coin money on their backs and feet when they haven't a para in the world. Altogether everyone is gloomy, and many desperate. I never saw the aspect of a population so changed. January 1st, 1867. God bless you, dearest Alick, and grant you many good years more. I must finish this to go tomorrow by the steamer. I would give a great deal to see you again, but when will that be? End of letter 93, read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 94 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON, read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Luxor, January 12, 1867. Dearest Alick, only 2 days ago I received letters from you of the 17th September and the 19th November. I wonder how many get lost and where. Janet gives me hopes of a visit of a few days in March, and promises me a little terrier dog, whereat Omar is in raptures. I have made no plans at all, never having felt well enough to hope to be able to travel. The weather has changed for the better, and it is not at all cold now. We shall see what the warmth does for me. You make my bowels yearn with your account of Rainey. If only we had Prince Achmet's carpet, and you could all come here for a few months. We were greatly excited here last week. A boy was shot out in the sugar cane field. He was with 4 Copts, and at first it looked ugly for the Copts. But the Maōhn tells me he is convinced they are innocent, and that they only prevaricated from fear. It was robbers that shot the poor child. What stuck and surprised me in the affair was the excessive horror and consternation it produced. The Maōhn had not had a murder in his district at all in 8 years. The market-place was thronged with wailing women. Omar was sick all day, and the Maōhn pale and wretched. The horror of killing seems greater here than I ever saw it. Palgrave says the same of the Arabian Arabs in his book. It is not one's notion of Oriental feeling, but a murder in England is taken quite as a joke compared with the scene here. I fear there will be robberies, owing to the distress, and the numbers who are running away from the land unable to pay their taxes. Don't fear for me, for I have 2 watchmen in the house every night, the regular guard and an amateur, a man whose boy I took down to Cairo to study in Gamal Azhar. Palgrave has written to Ross wanting Mabrook back. I am very sorry, the more so as Mabrook is recalcitrant. I want to stay with thee, I don't want to go back to the Nazarene. A boy who heard him said, but the lady is a Nazarene too, whereupon Mabrook slapped his face with great vigour. He will be troublesome if he does turn restive, and he is one who can only be managed by kindness. He is as good and quiet as possible with us, but the stubborn will is there, and he is too ignorant to be reasoned with. January 14th. Today the 4 Copts have again changed their story, and after swearing that the robbers were strangers, have accused a man who has shot birds for me all this winter, and the poor devil is gone to Kenna in chains. The weather seems to have set in steadily for fine. I hope soon to get out, but my donkey has grown old and shaky and I am too weak to walk, so I sit in the balcony. End of Letter 94. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 95 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Mrs. Austen, Luxor, January 14, 1867. Dearest Mother, we have had a very cold winter, and I have been constantly ailing. Luckily, the cough has transferred itself from the night to the day, and I get some good sleep. The last 2 days have been much warmer, and I hope matters will mend. I am beginning to take cod liver oil, as we can't find a milch camel anywhere. My boat has been well let in Cairo, and is expected here every day. The gentlemen shoot, and tell the crew not to row, and in short take it easy, and give them £2 in every place. Imagine what luxury for my crew! I shall have to dismiss the lot, they will be so spoiled. The English Consul General came up in a steamer with Dr. Patterson and Mr. Francis. I dined with them one day. I wish you could have seen me carried in my armchair high up on the shoulders of 4 men, like a successful candidate, or more like one of the pharaohs in an ancient bas-relief, preceded by torch-bearers and other attendants and followers. My procession was quite regal. I wish I could show you a new friend of mine, Osman Ibrahim, who studied medicine 5 years in Paris. My heart warmed to him directly, because, like most high-bred Arabs, he is so like Don Quixote, only Don Quixote quite in his senses. The sort of innocent sententiousness, and perfectly natural love of fine language and fine sentiments, is unattainable to any European, except, I suppose, a Spaniard. It is quite unlike Italian fustian or French sentiment. I suppose to most Europeans it is ridiculous, but I used to cry when the carriers beat the most noble of all knights, when I was a little girl and read Don Quixote, and now I feel, as it were, like Sancho, when I listen to Osman reciting bits of heroic poetry, or uttering wise saws and modern instances, with the peculiar mixture of strong sense of exultation which stamps the great Don. I may not repeat all I heard from him of the state of things here, and the insults he had to endure, a sherif and an educated man, from coarse Turkish pashas. It was the carriers over again. He told me he had often cried like a woman, at night in his own room, at the miseries he was forced to witness and could do nothing to relieve. All the men I have particularly liked, I find, are more or less pupils of the Sheykh el Bagouri, now dead, who seems to have had the gift of inspiring honourable feeling. Our good Maon is one. He is no conjurer, but the honesty and goodness are heroic which lead a man to starve on £15 a month, when he is expected to grow rich on plunder. The war in Crete saddens many a household here. Sheykh Yusuf's brother, Sheykh Eurus, is serving there, and many more. People are actually beginning to say, "We hope the English and French won't fight for the Sultan if the Muscovites want to eat him. There will be no good for us till the Turks are driven out." All the old religious devotion to the Sultan seems quite gone. Poor Mustapha has been very unwell, and I stopped his Ramadan, gave him some physic and ordered him not to fast, for which I think he is rather grateful. The Imam and Mufti always endorse my prohibitions of fasting to my patients. Old Ishmael is dead, aged over 100. He served Belzoni, and when he grew doting was always wanting me to go with him to join Belzoni at Abu Simbel. He was not at all ill, he only went out like a candle. His grandson brought me a bit of the meat cooked at his funeral and begged me to eat it, that I might live to be very old, according to the superstition here. When they killed the buffalo for the Sheykh Abul Hajjaj, the man who had a right to the feet kindly gave them to Omar, who wanted to make calf's foot jelly for me. I had a sort of profane feeling, as if I were eating a descendant of the bull Apis. I am reading Madame du Deffand's letters. What a repulsive picture of a woman! I don't know which I dislike most, Horace Walpole or herself. The conflict of selfishness, vanity, and ennui disguised as sentiment is quite hateful. To her Turgot was un seul animal, so much for her great gifts. Remember me kindly to William, and tell him how much I wish I could see his improvements. Omar also desires his salam to him, having a sort of fellow feeling for your faithful henchman. I need not say he kisses your hand most dutifully. End of Letter 95. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 96 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Luxor, January 22, 1867. Dearest Alec, the weather has been lovely for the last week, and I am therefore somewhat better. My boat arrived today with all the men in high good humour, and Omar tells me all is in good order, only the people in Cairo gave her the evil eye, and broke the iron part of the rudder which had to be repaired at Beni Suef. Mr. Lear has been here the last few days, and is just going up to the second cataract. He has done a little drawing of my house for you, a new view of it. He is a pleasant man, and I was glad to see him. Such a queer fellow came here the other day, a tall, stalwart Holsteiner, I should think a man of 50, who has been 4 years up in the Sudan and Sennar, and being penniless, had walked all through Nubia begging his way. He was not the least down upon his luck, and spoke with enthusiasm of the hospitality and kindness of Sir Samuel Baker's tigers. Ja, das sind die rechten Kerls, das ist das glückliche Leben. His account is, that if you go with an armed party, the blacks naturally show fight, as men with guns, in their eyes, are always slave-hunters, but if you go alone and poor, they kill an ox for you, unless you prefer a sheep, give you a hut, and generally anything they have to offer, Maracy, beer to make you as drunk as a lord, and young ladies to pour it out for you, and you need not wear any clothes. If you had heard him, you would have started for the interior at once. I gave him a dinner and a bottle of common wine, which he emptied, and a few shillings, and away he trudged merrily towards Cairo. I wonder what the Nubians thought of a Hagawa begging. He said they were all kind, and that he was sure he often ate what they pinched themselves to give, durra bread and dates. In the evening we were talking about this man's stories, and of anthropophagy and men whose heads do grow to a prodigious height, by means of an edifice woven of their own hair, and other queer things, when Hassan told me a story which pleased me particularly. My father, said he, Sheikh Mohammed, who was a taller and handsomer man than I am, was travelling very far up in the Black Country, and he and the men he was with had very little to eat, and had killed nothing for many days. Presently they heard a sort of wailing from a hole in the rock, and some of the men went in and dragged out a creature, I know not, and my father knew not, whether a child of Adam or a beast, but it was like a very foul and ill-shaped woman, and had 6 toes on its feet. The men wished to slay it, according to the law, declaring it to be a beast and lawful food, but when it saw the knife, it cried sadly and covered its face with its hands in terror, and my father said, By the Most High God, ye shall not slay the poor woman-beast which thus begs its life. I tell you it is unlawful to eat one so like the children of Adam. And the beast or woman clung to him and hid under his cloak, and my father carried her for some time behind him on his horse, until they saw some creatures like her, and then he sent her to them, but he had to drive her from him by force, for she clung to him. Thinkest thou, O lady, it was really a beast, or some sort of the children of Adam? God knows, and he only, said I piously, but by his indulgent name, thy father, O Sheikh, was a true nobleman. Sheikh Yussuf chimed in and gave a decided opinion that a creature able to understand the sight of the knife and act so, was not lawful to kill for food. You see what a real Arab Don Quixote was. It is a picture worthy of him, the tall, noble-looking Ababda sheltering the poor woman-beast, most likely a gorilla or chimpanzee, and carrying her en croupe. End of Letter 96. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 97 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Mrs. Austen, Luxor, January 26, 1867. Dearest Mother, I must betray dear Sheikh Yussuf's confidence and tell you his love story. A young fellow ran away with a girl he loved a short time ago, she having told him that her parents wanted to marry her to another, and that she would go to such a spot for water, and he must come on a horse, beat her and carry her off. The beating saves the maiden's blushes. Well, the lad did it, and carried her to Salamea where they were married, and then they went to Sheykh Yussuf to get him to conciliate the family, which he did. He told me the affair, and I saw he sympathized much with the runaways. "Ah," he said, "lady, it is love, and that is terrible. I can tell thee love is dreadful indeed to bear." Then he hesitated and blushed and went on, "I felt at once, lady, it was the will of God that I should love her who is now my wife. 13 years ago I loved her and wished to marry her, but my father and her grandfather my uncle the Shereef had quarrelled, and they took her and married her to another man. I never told anyone of it, but my liver was burning and my heart ready to burst for 3 years, but when I met her I fixed my eyes on the ground for fear she should see my love, and I said to myself, O Yussuf, God has afflicted thee, praise be unto him, do thou remember thy blood, Shereef, and let thy conduct be that of the Beni Azra, who, when they are thus afflicted, die rather than sin, for they have the strongest passion of love and the greatest honour. And I did not die, but went to Cairo to the Gamal el Azhar and studied, and afterwards I married twice, as thou knowest, but I never loved any but that one, and when my last wife died the husband of this one had just divorced her to take a younger and prettier one, and my father desired me then to take her, but I was half afraid, not knowing whether she would love me, but praise be to God I consented, and behold, poor thing, she also had loved me in like manner. I thought when I went to see her that she was unusually radiant with new married happiness, and she talked of El Sheikh with singular pride and delight, and embraced me and called me mother most affectionately. Is this not a pretty piece of regular Arab romance like Gamem? My boat has gone up today with 2 very nice Englishmen in her. Their young Maltese dragoman, aged 24, told me his father often talked of the commissioners and all they had done, and how things were changed in the island for the better. Everything spiritual and temporal has been done for the boat's safety in the cataract. Urgent letters to the Ma'on el Badr, and him of Aswan to see the men, and plenty of prayers and vows to Abul Hajjaj on behalf of the property of the lady, or Kurzweg, our boat, as she is commonly called in Luxor. Here we have the other side of the misery of the Candian business. In Europe, of course, the obvious thing is the suffering of the Cretans, but really I am more sorry for the poor fellah lads who are dragged away to fight in a quarrel they had no hand in raising, and with which they have no sympathy. The Times suggests that the Sultan should relinquish the island, and that has been said in many an Egyptian hut long before. The Sultan is worn out, and the Muslims here know it, and they say it would be the best stay for the Arabs if he were driven out. That, after all, a Turk never was the true Amir el Moamin, commander of the faithful. Only in Europe people talk and write as if it were all Muslim versus Christian, and the Christians were all oppressed and the Muslims all oppressors. I wish they could see the domineering of the Greeks and Maltese as Christians. The Englishman domineers as a free man and a Briton, which is different, and that is the reason why the Arabs wish for English rule, and would dread that of Eastern Christians. Well they may, for if ever Greeks do reign in Stamboul the sufferings of the Muslims will satisfy the most eager fanatic that ever cursed Mahound. I know nothing of Turkey, but I have seen and heard enough to know that there are plenty of other divisions besides that of Christian and Muslim. Here in Egypt it is clear enough, it is Arab versus Turk, and the Copt siding with the stronger for his interest, while he rather sympathizes with his brother fellah. At all events the Copt don't want other Christians to get power, he would far rather have a Muslim than a heretic ruler, above all the hated Greek. The Englishman he looks on as a variety of Muslim, a man who washes, has no pictures in his church, who has married bishops, and above all, who does not fast from all that has life for half the year, and this heresy is so extreme as not to give offence unless he tries to convert. The Pasha's sons have just been up the river. They ordered a reading of the Koran at the tomb of Abul Hajjaj, and gave every alim 6d. We have not left off chaffing, as Maurice would say, Sheikh Ala ud Din, the Muezzin, and sundry others on this superb bakshish, and one old Fiki never knows whether to laugh, to cry, or to scold, when I ask to see the shawl and tarboosh he has bought with the presents of Pashas. Yussuf and the Kadee, too, had been called on to contribute baskets of bread to the steamer, so that their sixpences were particularly absurd. The little boy whose father died is still with Ababda, who will not let him travel to Cairo till the weather is warmer and they find a safe person to be kind to him. Rachma says, please God, he will go with the Sitt, perhaps. Hassan has consoled him with sugar cane and indulgence, and if I lose Mabruk and the little boy likes me, he may fall into my hands as Achmet has done. I hear he is a good boy but a perfect savage, that, however, I find makes no difference. In fact, I think they learn faster than those who have ways of their own. So I see Terence was a nigger. I would tell Rachma so if I could make him understand who Terence was, and that he, Rachma, stood in need of any encouragement, but the worthy fellow never imagines that his skin is in any way inferior to mine. End of letter 97. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 98 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Luxor, February 3, 1867. Dearest Alick, the boat goes down tomorrow, and I have little to add to Mutter's letter, only that I am better. There is a man here from Girgeh who says he is married to a Guinea fairy princess. I have asked to be presented to her, but I suspect there will be some hitch about it. It will be like Alexis's Allez, madame, vous êtes trop incrédule. The unintelligible thing is that the motive which prompts wonders and miracles here, seeing that the wonder workers do not get any money by it, and indeed very often give, like the Indian saint I told you of who gave me $4. His miracles were all gratis, which was the most miraculous thing of all in a saint. I am promised that the Guinea shall come through the wall. If she should do it, I shall be compelled to believe in her, as there are no mechanical contrivances in Luxor. All the harem here believe it, and the man's human wife swears she waits on her like a slave, and backs her husband's lie or delusion fully. I have not seen the man, but I should not wonder if it were a delusion. Real bona fide visions and revelations are so common, and I think there is but little downright imposture. Meanwhile familiarity breeds contempt. Jinns, afrits, and shaitans inspire far less respect than the stupidest ghost at home, and the devil, Iblis, is reduced to deplorable insignificance. He is never mentioned in the pulpit, or in religious conversation, with the respect he enjoys in Christian countries. I suppose we may console ourselves with the hope that he will pay off the Muslims for their neglect of him hereafter. I cannot describe to you the misery here now. Indeed, it is wearisome even to think of, every day some new tax. Now every beast, camel, cow, sheep, donkey, horse, is made to pay. The fellaheen can no longer eat bread, they are living on barley meal, mixed with water and new green stuff, vetches, etc., which to people used to good food is terrible, and I see all my acquaintances growing seedy and ragged and anxious. Yussuf is clear of debt, his religion having kept him from borrowing, but he wants to sell his little slave girl, and has sold his donkey, and he is the best off. The taxation makes life almost impossible. 100 piastres for feddan, a tax on every crop, on every annual fruit, and again when it is sold in the market, on every man, on charcoal, on butter, on salt, on the dancing girls. I wonder I am not tormented for money. Not above 3 people have tried to beg or borrow. Thanks for the Westminster epilogue. It always amuses me much. So Terence was a nigger. There is no trace of the negro boy in his Davis. My nigger has grown huge, and has developed a voice of thunder. He is of the elephantine rather than the tiger species, a very mild young savage. I shall be sorry when Palgrave takes him. I am tempted to buy Yussuf's nice little Dinka girl to replace him, only a girl is such an impossibility where there is no regular harem. In the boat Achmet is enough under Omar, but in this large dusty house, and with errands to run, and comers and goers to look after, pipes and coffee and the like, it takes 2 boys to be comfortable. Maybrook, too, washes very well. It is surprising how fast the boys learn, and how well they do their work. Achmet, who is quite little, would be a perfectly sufficient servant for a man alone. He can cook, wash, clean the rooms, make the beds, do all the table service, knife and plate cleaning, all fairly well, and I believe now he would get along even without Omar's orders. Mabruk is slower, but he has the same merit our poor Hassan had. He never forgets what he has been once told to do, and he is clean in his work, though hopelessly dirty as to his clothes. He cannot get used to them, and takes a roll in the dust or leans against a dirty wall, oblivious of his clean-washed blue shirt. Achmet is quicker and more careless, but they both are good boys and very fond of Omar. Uncle Omar is the form of address, though he scolds them pretty severely if they misbehave, and I observe that the high jinks take place chiefly when only I am in the way, and Omar gone to market or the mosque. The little rogues have found out that their laughing does not affect my nerves, and I am often treated to a share in the joke. How I wish Rainey could see the children, they would amuse her. Yussuf's girl, Mir en Nezil, is a charming child, and very clever. Her enigmatic way of explaining everything to me, and her gestures would delight you. Her cousin and future husband, age 5, she is 6, broke the doll which I had given her, and her description of it was most dramatic, ending with a wheedling glance at the cupboard, and of course there are no more dolls there, oh no, no more. She is a fine little creature, far more Arab than Fellaha, quite a shaitan, her father says. She came in full of making cakes for Bairam, and offered her services. "Oh, my aunt, if thou wantest anything I can work," said she, tucking up her sleeves. End of Letter 98. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 99 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Mrs. Austen, Luxor, March 6, 1867. Dearest Mother, the warm weather has set in, and I am already as much the better for it as usual. I had a slight attack, not nearly so bad as that at Soudan, but it lingered, and I kept my bed as a measure of precaution. Dear Yussuf was with me the evening I was attacked, and sat up all night to give me my medicine every hour. At the prayer of dawn, an hour and a half before sunrise, I heard his supplications for my life and health, and for you and all my family, and I thought of what I had lately read, how the Greeks massacred their own patriots because the Turks had shown them mercy, a display of temper which I hope will enlighten Western Christendom as to what the Muslims have to expect, if they, the Western Christians, help the Eastern Christians to get the upper hand. Yussuf was asking about a lady the other day who has turned Catholic. "Poor thing," said he, "the priests have drawn out her brains through her ears, no doubt, but never fear, her heart is good and her charity great, and God will not deal hardly with those who serve him with their hearts, though it is sad she should bow down before images. But look at thy slave Mabruk. Can he understand 100th part of the thoughts of thy mind? Nevertheless he loves thee, and obeys thee with pleasure and alacrity, and wilt thou punish him because he knows not all thy ways? And shall God, who is so much higher above us as thou art above thy slave, be less just than thou?" I pinned him at once, and insisted on knowing the orthodox belief, but he quoted the Koran and the decisions of the Ulema to show that he stretched no point as far as Jews and Christians are concerned, and that even idolaters are not to be condemned by man. Yussuf wants me to write a short account of the faith from his dictation. Would anyone publish it? It annoys him terribly to hear the Muslims constantly accused of intolerance, and he is right. It is not true. They show their conviction that their faith is the best in the world with the same sort of naivete that I have seen in very innocent and ignorant Englishwomen, in fact, display a sort of religious conceit, but it is not often bitter or haineux, however much they are in earnest. I am going to write to Palgrave and ask him to let me send another boy or the money for Mabruk, who can't endure the notion of leaving me. Achmet, who was always hankering after the flesh pots of Alexandria, got some people belonging to the boats to promise to take him, and came home and picked a quarrel and departed. Poor little chap, the Sheikh el Beled put a spoke in his wheel by informing him he would be wanted for the Pasha's works, and must stay in his own place. Since he went, Mabrook has come out wonderfully and does his own work and Achmet's with the greatest satisfaction. He tells me he likes it best. He likes to be quiet. He just suits me and I him. It is humiliating to find how much more I am to the taste of savages than of the polite circles. The old lady of the Mahon promised to come to me, but I would not let her leave her home, which would be quite an adventure to her. I knew she would be exclamatory and lament over me and say every minute, "Oh, my liver! Oh, my eyes! The name of God upon thee, and never mind. Tomorrow, please God, thou wilt be quite well," and so forth. People send me such odd dishes, some very good. Yussuf's wife packed 2 calves' feet tight in a little black earthen pot, with a seasoning of herbs, and baked it in the bread oven, and the result was excellent. Also she made me a sort of small macaroni, extremely good. Now, too, we can get milk again, and Omar makes kishta, alias clotted cream. Do send me a good edition of the Arabian Nights in Arabic, and I should much like to give Yussuf Lane's Arabic Dictionary. He is very anxious to have it. I can't read the Arabian Nights, but it is a favourite amusement to make one of the party read aloud. A stray copy of Kamar ez-Zaman and Sit Boudurra went all around Luxor, and was much coveted for the village soirées, but its owner departed, and left us to mourn over the loss of his manuscripts. I must tell you a black standard of respectability. It is quite equal to the English one of the gig or the ham for breakfast. I was taking counsel with my friend Rachma, a negro, about Mabrook, and he urged me to buy him of Palgrave, because he saw that the lad really loved me. Moreover, said he, the boy is of a respectable family, for he told me his mother wore a cow's tail down to her heels, that and a girdle to which the tail is fastened, and a tiny leathern apron in front, constituted her whole wardrobe, and that she beat him well when he told lies or stole his neighbour's eggs. Poor woman! I wish this abominable slave trade had spared her and her boy. What folly it is to stop the Circassian slave trade, if it is stopped, and to leave this. The Circassians take their own children to market as a way of providing for them handsomely, and both boys and girls like being sold to the rich Turks, but the blacks and Abyssinians fight hard for their own liberty and that of their cubs. Mabrook swears that there were 2 Europeans in the party which attacked his village and killed he knew not how many, and carried him and others off. He was not stolen by Arabs, or by Barbaries like Hassan, but taken in a war from his home by the seaside, a place called Buki, and carried in a ship to Jeddah, and thence back to Kosseir and Kenna, where Palgrave bought him. I must say that once here the slaves are happy and well off, but the waste of life and the misery caused by the trade must be immense. The slaves are coming down the river by hundreds every week, and are very cheap, 12 to 20 pounds for a fine boy, and 9 pounds and upwards for a girl. I heard that the last Gelab offered a woman and a baby for anything anyone would give for them on the count of the trouble of the baby. By the by, Mabrook displays the negro talent for babies. Now that Achmet is gone, who scolded them and drove them out, Mohammed's children, quite babies, are forever trotting after Mabou, as they pronounce his name, and he talks incessantly to them. It reminds me so of Janet and poor Hassan, but Mabrook is not like Hassan. He is one of the sons of Anak, and already as big and strong as a man, with the most prodigious chest and limbs. Don't be at all uneasy about me as to care. Omar knows exactly what to do, as he showed the other day when I was taken ill. I had shown him the medicines and given him instructions, so I had not even to speak, and if I were to be ill enough to want more help, Yussuf would always sit up alternate nights, but it is not necessary. Arabs make no grievance about broken rest. They don't go to bed properly, but lie down half-dressed, and have a happy faculty of sleeping at odd times, and anyhow, which enables them to wait on one night and day, without distressing themselves as it distresses us. Thursday. A telegram has just come announcing that Janet will leave Cairo tomorrow in a steamer, and therefore be here, inshallah, this day week. I enclose a note from a Copt boy, which will amuse you. He is sapping at English, and I teach him whenever I am able. I am a special favourite with all the young lads. They must not talk much before grown men, so they come and sit on the floor round my feet, and ask questions and advice, and enjoy themselves amazingly. Hobbledehoyhood is very different here from what it is with us. They care earlier for the affairs of the grown-up world, and are more curious and more polished, but lack the fine animal gaiety of our boys. The girls are much more gamine than the boys, and more romping and joyous. It is very warm now. I fear Janet will sigh terribly over the heat. They have left their voyage too late for such as do not love the Shems el Kabir, the big sun, which has just begun. I who worship Amun-Ra love to feel him in his glory. It is long since I had any letters. I want so to hear how you all are. End of letter 99. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 100 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, March 7, 1867. Dearest Alec, I have written a long yarn to mutter, and am rather tired, so I only write to say I am much better. The heat has set in, and of course with it my health has mended, but I am a little shaky and afraid to tire myself. Moreover, I want to nurse up and be stronger by next Thursday, when Janet and Ross are expected. Who wants to whitewash Miss Rampsinitus, and identify her with the beloved of Solomon or Salim. My brain spun round as I read it. Must I answer him, or will you? A dragoman gave me an old broken travelling armchair, and Yusuf sat in an armchair for the first time in his life. May the soul of the man who made it find a seat in paradise, was his exclamation, which strikes me as singularly appropriate on sitting in a very comfortable armchair. Yusuf was thankful for small mercies in this case. I am afraid Janet may be bored by all the people's civility. They will insist on making great dinners and fantasias for her, I am sure. I hope they will go on to Assouan and take me with them. The change will do me good, and I should like to see as much of her as I can before she leaves Egypt for good. The state of business here is curious. The last regulations have stopped all money lending, and the prisons are full of Sheikh el Beled whose villages can't pay the taxes. Most respectable men have offered me to go partners with them now in their wheat, which will be cut in 6 weeks, if only I would pay their present taxes, I to take half the crop and half the taxes, with interest out of their half, some such trifle as 30% per month. Our prison is full of men, and we send them their dinner à tour de rôle. The other day a woman went with a big wooden bowl on her head, full of what she had cooked for them, accompanied by her husband. One Khalil Effendi, a new vakeel here, was there, and said, "What dost thou ask here, thou harlot?" Her husband answered, "That is no harlot, O Effendim, but my wife." Whereupon he was beaten till he fainted, and then there was a lamentation. They carried him down past my house, with a crowd of women all shrieking like mad creatures, especially his wife, who yelled and beat her head and threw dust over it, more majorum, as you see in the tombs. The humours of tax-gathering in this country are quite impayable, you perceive, and ought to be set forth on the escutcheon of the new Knight of the Bath, whom the Queen hath delighted to honour. Cawas battant, fella rampant, and fellaha pleurant would be the proper blazon. Distress in England is terrible, but at least it is not the result of extortion, as it is here, while everything from nature is so abundant and glorious, and yet mankind so miserable. It is not a little hunger, it is the cruel oppression which maddens the people now. They never complained before, but now whole villages are deserted. The boat goes tomorrow morning, so I must say good-bye. End of letter 100. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 101 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Mrs. Austen, Luxor, April 12, 1867. Dearest Mother, I have just received your letters, including the one for Omar which I read to him, and which he kissed and said he should keep as a hegeb talisman. I have given him an order on Coutts' correspondence for the money, in case I die. Omar proposes to wait till we get to Cairo and then to buy a little house, or a floor in one. I am to keep all the money till the house is found, so he will in no way be tempted to do anything foolish with it. I hope you approve? Janet's visit was quite an Eid festival, as the people said. When I got up on the morning she was expected, I found the house decked with palm branches and lemon blossoms, and the holy flags of Abu l-Hajjaj waving over my balcony. The mosque people had brought them, saying all the people were happy today, because it was a fortunate day for me. I suppose if I had a mind to testify, I ought to have indignantly torn down the banners which bore the declaration, "There is no God but God, and Mohammed is his prophet." But it appeared to me that if imams and muezzins could send their banners to decorate a Christian house, the Christian might manage to endure the kindness. Then there was fantasia on horseback, and all the notables to meet the boat, and general welcome and jubilation. Next day I went on with Henry and Janet in the steamer, and had a very pleasant time to Assouan and back, and they stayed another day here, and I hired a little dahabeah which they towed down to Keneh where they stayed a day, after which Sheykh Yussuf and I sailed back again to Luxor. As bad luck would have it, we had hot weather just the week they were up here. Since then it has been quite cool. Janet has left me her little black and tan terrier, a very nice little dog, but I can't hope to rival Omar in his affections. He sleeps in Omar's bosom, and Omar spoils and pets him all day, and boasts to the people how the dog drinks tea and coffee and eats dainty food, and the people say "Mashallah," whereas I should have expected them to curse the dog's father. The other day a scrupulous person drew back with an air of alarm from Bob's approach, whereupon the dog stared at him and forthwith plunged into Sheykh Yussuf's lap, from which stronghold he yapped defiance at whoever should object to him. I never laughed more heartily, and Yussuf went into fou rire. The mouth of the dog only is unclean, and Yussuf declares he is a very well educated dog, and does not attempt to lick. He pets him accordingly, and gives him tea in his own saucer, only not in the cup. I am to inherit another little blackie from Ross's agency at Keneh, the funniest little chap. I cannot think why I go on expecting so-called savages to be different from other people. Mabrook's simple talk about his village, and the animals and the victuals, and how the men of a neighbouring village stole him in order to sell him for a gun, the price of a gun as a boy, but were prevented by a razzia of Turks, etc., who killed the first aggressors and took all the children, all this he tells just as an English boy might tell of bird nesting. Delights me. He has the same general notion of right and wrong, and yet his tribe know neither bread nor any sort of clothes, nor cheese nor butter, nor even drink milk, nor the African beer, and it always rains there, and is always deadly cold at night, so that without a fire they would die. They have two products of civilization, guns and tobacco, for which they pay in boys and girls, whom they steal. I wonder where the country is. It is called Sawagli, and the next people are Musa on the sea coast, and it is not so hot as Egypt. It must be in the southern hemisphere. The new Negrillon is from Darfur. Won't Maurice be amused by his attendance? The Darfur boy will trot after him, as he can shoot and clean guns, tiny as he is. Maurice seems to wish to come, and I hope Alexander will let him spend the winter here, and I will take him up to the Second Cataract. I really think he would enjoy it. My boat will not return, I think, for another 6 weeks. Mr. Eaton and Mr. Baird were such nice people. Their dragoman, a Maltese, appeared to hate the Italians with ferocity. He said all decent people in Malta would 10 times rather belong to the Mohammedans than to the Italians. After all, blood tells. He was a very respectable young man, and being a dragoman and the son of a dragoman, he has seen the world, and particularly the Muslims. I suppose it is the Pope that makes the Italians so hateful to them. The post here is dreadful. I would not mind their reading one's letters if they would only send them on. Omar begs we to say that he and his children will pray for you all his life, please God, not for the money only, but still more for the good words and the trusting him. But he says, I can't say much politica, please God, she shall see, only I kiss her hand now. You will hear from Janet about her excursion. What I liked best was shooting the cataract in a small boat. It was fine fantasia. End of letter 101. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 102 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff Gordon, Luxor, April 19, 1867. Dearest Alick, I have been much amused lately by a new acquaintance, who, in romances of the last century, would have been called an Arabian sage. Sheikh Abdurrahman lives in a village half a day's journey off, and came over to visit me and to doctor me according to the science of Galen and Avicenna. Fancy a tall, thin, graceful man, with a grey beard and liquid eyes, absorbed in studies of the obsolete kind, a doctor of theology, law, medicine, and astronomy. We spent 3 days in arguing and questioning. I consented to swallow a potion or two which he made up before me of very innocent materials. My friend is neither a quack nor superstitious, and 200 years ago would have been a better physician than most in Europe. Indeed, I would rather swallow his physic now than that of many an M.D. I found him, like all the learned theologians I have known, extremely liberal and tolerant. You can conceive nothing more interesting and curious than the conversation of a man learned and intelligent, and utterly ignorant of all our modern Western science. If I was pleased with him, he was enchanted with me, and swore by God that I was a mufti indeed, and that a man could nowhere spend time so delightfully as in conversation with me. He said he had been acquainted with 2 or 3 Englishmen who had pleased him much, but that if all Englishwomen were like me, the power must necessarily be in our hands, for that my akil, brain, intellect, was far above that of the men he had known. He objected to our medicine that it seemed to consist in palliatives, which he rather scorned, and aimed always at a radical cure. I told him that if he had studied anatomy he would know that radical cures were difficult of performance, and he ended by lamenting his ignorance of English or some European language, and that he had not learned our ilm science also. Then we plunged into sympathies, mystic numbers, and the occult virtues of stones, etc., and I swallowed my mixture, consisting of licorice, cumin, and soda, just as the sun entered a particular house, and the moon was in some favourable aspect. He praised to me his friend, a learned Jew of Cairo. I could have fancied myself listening to Abu Suleiman of Cordova, in the days when we were the barbarians and the Arabs were the learned race. There is something very winning in the gentle, dignified manners of all the men of learning I have seen here, and their homely dress and habits make it still more striking. I longed to photograph my sheikh as he sat on the divan pulling manuscripts out of his bosom to read me the words of El Hakim Lokman, or to overwhelm me with the authority of some physician whose very name I had never heard. The hand of the government is awfully heavy upon us. All this week the people have been working night and day cutting their unripe corn, because 310 men are to go tomorrow to work on the railroad below Siout. This green corn is, of course, valueless to sell and unwholesome to eat, so the magnificent harvest of this year is turned to bitterness at the last moment. From a neighbouring village all the men are gone, and 7 more are wanted to make up the corvée. The population of Luxor is 1,000 males of all ages, so you can guess how many strong men are left after 310 are taken. I don't like to think too much about seeing you and Maurice next winter, for fear I should be disappointed. If I am too sick and wretched I can hardly wish you to come, because I know what a nuisance it is to be with one always coughing and panting and unable to do like other people. But if I pick up tolerably this summer I shall indeed be glad to see you and him once more. This house is falling sadly to decay, which produces snakes and scorpions. I sent for the Hawi snake catcher, who caught a snake, but who can't conjure the scorpions out of their holes. One of my fat turkeys has just fallen a victim, and I am in constant fear for little Bob, only he is always in Omar's arms. I think I described to you the festival of Sheikh Gibriel, the dinner, the poets who improvised. This year I had a fine piece of declamation in my honour. A real calamity is the loss of our good Maon, Salim Effendi. The Mudir hailed him from his steamer to go to Keneh directly, with no further notice. We hoped some good luck for him, and so it would have been to a Turk. He is made overseer to the poor people at the railway work, and only gets £2 5s per month additional. He has to keep a horse and a donkey, and to buy them and to hire a sais, and he does not know how to squeeze the fellaheen. It is true, however close you skin an onion, a clever man can always peel it again. which means that even the poorest devils at the works can be beaten into giving a little more, but our dear Salim, God bless him, will be ruined and made miserable by his promotion. I had a very woeful letter from him yesterday. End of letter 102. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 103 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Luxor, May 15, 1867. Dearest Alec, all the Christendom of Upper Egypt is in a state of excitement, owing to the arrival of the Patriarch of Cairo, who is now in Luxor. My neighbor, Michael, entertains him, and Omar has been busily decorating his house and arranging the illumination of his garden, and today is gone to cook the confectionery, he being looked upon as the person best acquainted with the customs of the great. Last night the Patriarch sent for me, and I went to kiss his hand, but I won't go again. It was a very droll caricature of the thunders of the Vatican. Poor Michael had planned that I was to dine with the Patriarch, and had borrowed my silver spoons, etc., etc., in that belief. But the representative of St. Mark is furious against the American missionaries who have converted some 20 Copts at Kous, and he could not bring himself to be decently civil to a Protestant. I found a coarse-looking man seated on a raised divan smoking his chibouk. On his right were some priests on a low divan. I went up and kissed his hand and was about to sit by the priests, but he roughly ordered a cawass to put a wooden chair off the carpet to his left, at a distance from him, and told me to sit there. I looked round to see whether any of my neighbors were present, and I saw the consternation in their faces. So, not wishing to annoy them, I did as if I did not perceive the affront, and sat down and talked for half an hour to the priests, and then took leave. I was informed that the Catholics were nas mekassin, poor inoffensive people, and that the Muslims at least were of an old religion, but that the Protestants ate meat all the year round, like dogs, or Muslims, put in Omar, who stood behind my chair and did not relish the mention of dogs and the English religion in one sentence. As I went the Patriarch called for dinner. It seems he had told Michael he would not eat with me. It is evidently a judgment of a most signal nature that I should be snubbed for the offences of missionaries, but it has caused some ill blood, the Cadi and Sheykh Yussuf and the rest, who all intended to do the civil to the Patriarch, now won't go near him on account of his rudeness to me. He has come up in a steamer, at the Pasha's expense, with a guard of cawasses, and of course is loud in praise of the government, though he failed in getting the Mudir to send all the Protestants of Kous to the public works, or the army. From what he said before me about the Abyssinians, and still more, from what he said to others about the English prisoners up there, I am convinced that the place to put the screw on is the Batar Chain Patriarch's Palace at Cairo, and that the priests are at the bottom of that affair. He boasted immensely of the obedience and piety of El Habesh, the Abyssinians. Saturday. Yesterday I heard a little whispered grumbling about the money demanded by the father. One of my Copt neighbours was forced to sell me his whole provision of cooking butter to pay his quota. This a little damps the exultation caused by seeing him so honoured by the Effendina. One man who had heard that he had called the American missionaries beggars grumbled to me, "Ah yes, beggars, beggars, they didn't beg of me for money." I really do think that there must be something in this dread of the Protestant movement. Evidently the Pasha is backing up the Patriarch, who keeps his church well apart from all other Christians, and well under the thumb of the Turks. It was pretty to hear the priests talk so politely of Islam, and curse the Protestants so bitterly. We were very nearly having a row about a woman who formerly turned Muslimah to get rid of an old blind Copt husband who had been forced upon her, and was permitted to recant, I suppose in order to get rid of the Muslim husband in his turn. However, he said, "I don't care, she is the mother of my 2 children, and whether she is Muslim or Christian she is my wife, and I won't divorce her, but I'll send her to church as much as she likes." Thereupon the priests of course dropped the wrangle, much to the relief of Sheykh Yussuf, in whose house she had taken up her quarters after leaving the church, and who was afraid of being drawn into a dispute. My new little Darfour boy is very funny and very intelligent. I hope he will turn out well. He seems well disposed, though rather lazy. Maybrook quarrelled with a boy belonging to the quarter close to us about a bird, and both boys ran away. The Arab boy is missing still, I suppose, but Maybrook was brought back by force, swelling with passion, and with his clothes most scripturally rent. He had regularly run amuck. Sheykh Yussuf lectured him on his insolence to the people of the quarter, and I wound up by saying, "Oh, my son, whither dost thou wish to go? I cannot let thee wander about like a beggar, with torn clothes and no money, that the police may take thee and put thee in the army, but say where thou desirest to go, and we will talk about it with discretion." It was at once borne in upon him that he did not want to go anywhere, and he said, "I repent, but I am an ox, bring the courbash, beat me, and let me go to finish cooking the Sitt's dinner." I remitted the beating, with a threat that if he bullied the neighbours again he would get it at the police, and not from Omar's very inefficient arm. In half an hour he was as merry as ever. It was a curious display of negro temper, and all about nothing at all. As he stood before me he looked quite grandly tragic, and swore he only wanted to run outside and die, that was all. I wish you could have heard and understood my soirées au clair de la lune with Sheykh Yussuf and Sheykh Abdurrahman. How Abdurrahman and I wrangled, and how Yussuf laughed and egged us on. Abdurrahman was wroth at my want of faith in physic generally, as well as in particular, and said I talked like an infidel, for had not God said, "I have made medicine for every disease"? I said, "Yes, but he does not say that he has told the doctors which it is," and meanwhile I say Hekmet Allah, God will cure, which can't be called an infidel sentiment. Then we got into alchemy, astrology, magic, and the rest, and Yussuf vexed his friend by telling gravely stories palpably absurd. Abdurrahman intimated that he was laughing at Ilm el-Muslimin, the science of the Muslims, but Yussuf said, "What is the Ilm el-Muslimin? God has revealed religion through his prophets, and we can learn nothing new on that point, but all other learning he has left to the intelligence of men, and the Prophet Muhammad said, all learning is from God, even the learning of idolaters. Why then should we Muslims shut out the light, and want to remain for ever like children? The learning of the Franks is as lawful as any other." Abdurrahman was too sensible a man to be able to dispute this, but it vexed him. I am tired of telling all the placarayan of our poor people, how 310 men were dragged off on Easter Monday with their bread and tools, how in 4 days they were all sent back from Keneh, because there were no orders about them, and made to pay their boat hire. Then in 5 days they were sent for again. Meanwhile the harvest was cut green, and the wheat is lying out unthreshed to be devoured by birds and rats, and the men's bread was wasted and spoiled with the hauling in and out of the boats. I am obliged to send camels 20 miles for charcoal, because the Abab'da won't bring it to market any more, the tax is too heavy. Butter too we have to buy secretly, none comes into the market. When I remember the lovely smiling landscape which I first beheld from my windows, swarming with beasts and men, and look at the dreary waste now, I feel the foot of the Turk heavy indeed. Where there were 50 donkeys there is but one, camels, horses, all are gone, not only the horned cattle, even the dogs are more than decimated, and the hawks and vultures seem to me fewer. Mankind has no food to spare for hangers-on. The donkeys are sold, the camels confiscated, and the dogs dead, the one sole advantage. Meat is cheap, as every one must sell to pay taxes, and no one has money to buy. I am implored to take sheep and poultry for what I will give. End of letter 103. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 104 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Mrs. Austen, Luxor, May 23, 1867. Dearest Mutter, I have only time for a few words by Giagar Pasha, who goes early tomorrow morning. My boat arrived all right and brought your tin box. The books and toys are very welcome. The latter threw the Darfour into ecstasies, and he got into disgrace for playing with the Sitt instead of minding some business on hand. I fear I shall spoil him, he is so extremely engaging and such a baby. He is still changing his teeth, so cannot be more than 8. At first I did not like him, and feared he was sullen, but it was the usual kas, fear, the word that is always in one's ears, and now that is gone, he is always coming hopping in to play with me. He is extremely intelligent, and has a pretty baby nigger face. The Darfour people are, as you know, an independent and brave people, and by no means savages. I can't help thinking how pleased Rainey would be with the child. He asked me to give him the picture of the English Sultana out of the Illustrated London News, and has pasted it inside the lid of his box. I am better, as usual, since the hot weather has begun, the last 6 days. I shall leave this in a week, I think, and Mustapha and Yussuf will go with me to Cairo. Yussuf was quite enchanted with your note to him, his eyes glistened, and he took an envelope to keep it carefully. Omar said such a letter is like a hijab amulet, and Yussuf said, truly it is, and I could never have one with more barakah blessing, or more like the virtue which went out of Jesus. If ever I wore one at all, I will never part with it. We had a very pretty festival for the Sheykh, whose tomb you have a photograph of, and I spent a very pleasant evening with Sheykh Abd el Mutaoul, who used to scowl at me, but now we are like brothers. I found him very clever, and better informed than any Arab I have met, who is quite apart from all Franks. I was astonished to find that he abondait dans mon sens in my dispute with Sheykh Abdurrahman, and said it was the duty of Muslims to learn what they could from us, and not to stick to the old routine. On Sunday the Patriarch snubbed me, and would not eat with me, and on Monday a wali (saint) picked out tit-bits for me with his own fingers, and went with me inside the tomb. The Patriarch has made a blunder with his progress. He has come ostentatiously as the protégé and prénom of the Pasha, and he has eaten and beaten the fellaheen. The Copts of Luxor have had to pay £50 for the honour of his presence, besides no end of sheep, poultry, butter, etc. If I were of a proselytizing mind I could make converts of several whose pockets and backs are smarting, and the American missionaries will do it. Of course the Muslims sympathize with the converts to a religion which has no idols, and no monks, and whose priests marry like other folk, so they are the less afraid. I hear there are now 50 Protestants at Kous, and the Patriarch was furious because he could not beat them. Omar cooked a grand dinner for him last night for our neighbour Mikael, and the eating was not over till 2 in the morning. Our government should manage to put the screw on him about our Abyssinian prisoners. I dare not say who told me all he said, but he was a truthful man and a Christian. The Patriarch answered me sharply when I asked about the state of the religion in Abyssinia that they were lovers of the faith, and his obedient children. Whenever there is mischief among the Copts, the priests are at the bottom of it. If the Patriarch chose, those people would be let go, and so it would be, but he hates all Europeans bitterly. I should like to have the Revue des Deux Mondes of all things, but I don't know how it is to come here, or what the postage would cost. They send nothing but letters above Cairo by post, as all goes on men's backs. Inshallah, I am the bearer of good news, cries the postman, as he flings the letter over the wall. I am so glad of the chance of getting news to you quick by Giafar Pasha, who came here like a gentleman, alone, without a retinue. He is on his way from 2 years in the Soudan, where he was absolute Pasha. He is very much liked and respected, and seems a very sensible and agreeable man, quite unlike any Turkish bigwig I have seen. Great potentate as he is, he made Yussuf Mustapha and Abdallah sit down, and was extremely civil and simple in his manners. End of letter 104. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 105 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Beni Suef, June 30th, 1867. Dearest Alick, I write on the chance that this may go safe by post, so that you may not think me lost. I left Luxor on May 31st, got to Siout half-way in a week, and have ever since been battling with an unceasing, furious north and north-east wind. I feel like the much-travelled Odysseus, and have seen villages and men. Unlike him, however, my companions have neither grumbled nor deserted, though it is a bad business for them, having received their money at the rate of about 20 days' pay, for which they must take me to Cairo. They have eaten all, and are now obliged to stop and make bread here, but they are as good humoured as if all were well. My fleet consisted of my dahabeah, flagship, tender, a kiassa, cargo boat for my horse and sais, wherein were packed 2 extremely poor shrivelled old widows, going to Cairo to see their sons, now in garrison there, lots of hard bread, wheat, flour, jars of butter, onions and lentils for all the lads of my family studying at Gamal Azhar, besides, in my box, queer little stores of long-hoarded money for those Megawareen, students of Gamal Azhar. Don't you wish you could provide for Maurice with a sack of bread, a basket of onions, and £1 16 shillings? The handsome brown Sheykh el Arab, Hassan, wanted me to take him, but I knew him to be a fast man, and asked Yussuf how I could avoid it without breaking the laws of hospitality, so my father, the old Sherif, told Hassan that he did not choose his daughter to travel with a wine-bibber and a frequenter of loose company. Under my convoy sailed 2 or 3 little boats with family parties. One of these was very pretty, whose steersman was a charming little fat girl of 5 years old. All these hoped to escape being caught and worried by the way, by belonging to me, and they dropped off at their several villages. I am tolerably well, better than when I started, in spite of the wind. Poor Rais Mohammed had a very bad attack of ophthalmia, and sat all of a heap, groaning all day and night, and protesting, "I am a Muslim," equivalent to "God's will be done." At one place I was known, and had a lot of sick to see, and a civil man killed a sheep and regaled us all with meat and fatira. The part of the river in which we were kept by the high wind is made cheerful by the custom of the hareem being just as free to mix with men as Europeans, and I quite enjoyed the pretty girls' face, and the gossip with the women who came to fill their water jars and peep in at the cabin windows, which, by the way, they always ask leave to do. The Sheykh el Hawara gave me 2 sheep, which are in the cargo boat with 4 others, all presents, which Omar intends you to eat at Cairo. The Sheykh is very anxious to give you an entertainment at his palace, if you come up the river, with horse riding, feasting, and dancing girls. In fact, I am charged with many messages to El Kebir, the great master. End of letter 105. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 106 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie Duff-Gordon. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Cairo, July 8, 1867. Dearest Alec, I arrived today after 38 days' voyage, 1 month of ceaseless furious wind. My men had a hard pull down against it. However, I am feeling better than when I left Luxor. Omar has just brought a whole cargo of your letters, the last of the 26th June. Let me know your plans. If you can go up the river I might send the boat beforehand to Minia. So far there is a railway now, which would break the neck of the tedious part of the voyage for you if you are pressed for time. I must send this off at once to catch early post tomorrow. Excuse haste, I write in all the bustle of arrival. End of letter 106. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 107 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie Duff-Gordon. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Mrs. Austen, Bullock, July 28, 1867. Dearest Mutter, I know I can write nothing more sure to please you than that I am a good deal better. It has been intensely hot, and the wind very worrying, but my cough has greatly abated, and I do not feel so weak as I did. I am anchored here in the river at my old quarters, and have not yet been ashore owing to the hot wind and the dust, which of course are far less troublesome here on the river. I have seen but very few people and have but one neighbour, in a boat anchored near mine, a very bewitching Circassian, the former slave of a rich Pasha, now married to a respectable dragoman, and staying in his boat for a week or 2. She is young and pretty, and very amiable, and we visit each other often and get on very well indeed. She is a very religious little lady, and was much relieved when I assured her it was not part of my daily devotions to curse the Prophet and revile the noble Koran. I am extremely glad that the English have given a hearty welcome to the Amir el Mornamin, Commander of the Faithful. It will have an excellent effect in all Mussulman countries. A queer little Indian from Delhi who had been converted to Islam and spent 4 years at Mecca acting as dragoman to his own countrymen, is now settled at Karnak. I sent for him and he came shaking in his shoes. I asked why he was afraid. Oh, perhaps I was angry about something and he was my rayah and I might have him beaten. I cried out at him, "Ask pardon of God, O man! How could I beat thee any more than thou couldst beat me? Have we not laws? And art thou not my brother, and the rayah of our queen, as I am and no more?" "Mashallah!" exclaimed the 6 or 8 fellaheen who were waiting for physic, in prodigious admiration and wonder, "and did we not tell thee that the face of the Sitt brings good fortune and not calamity and stick?" I found the little Indian had been a hospital servant in Calcutta and was practising a little physic on his own account. So I gave him a few drugs especially for bad eyes, which he knew a good deal about, and we became very good friends. He was miserable when I left and would have liked me to have taken him as a volunteer servant. I have come to a curious honour. Ich bin beim lebendigem Lebe besungen. Several parties of real Arabs came with their sick on camels from the desert above Edfu. I asked at last what brought them, and they told me that a shair, bard or poet, had gone about singing my praises, as how the daughter of the English was a flower on the heads of the Arabs, and those who were sick should go and smell the perfume of the flower and rejoice in the brightness of the light, Noreen, my name. Rather a high-flown way of mentioning the exhibition of a black dose. But we don't feel that a man makes a fool of himself here when he is romantic in his talk, even about an old woman. It is no use to talk of the state of things here. All classes are suffering terribly under the fearful taxation, the total ruin of the fellaheen, and the destruction of trade brought about by this much extolled Pasha. My grocer is half ruined by the improvements made à l'instar de Paris, long military straight roads cut through the heart of Cairo. The owners are expropriated, and there is an end of it. Only those who have half a house left are to be pitied, because they are forced to build a new front to the street on a Frankish model, which renders it uninhabitable to them and unsaleable. The rivermen are excited about the crews gone to Paris, for fear they should be forcibly detained by the Sultana Franzaweeh. I assured them that all will come home safe and happy, with a good bakshish. Many of them think it a sort of degradation to be taken for the Parisians to stare at like an antica, a word which here means what our people call a curiosity. I go on very well with my 2 boys. Maybrook washes very well and acts as marmiton. Darfour is housemaid and waiter in his very tiny way. He is only troublesome as being given to dirty his clothes in an incredibly short time. His account of the school system of Darfour is curious. How, when the little boy has achieved excellence, he is carried home in triumph to his father's house, who makes a festival for the master and boys. I suppose you will be surprised to hear that the Darfour niggers can nearly all read and write. Poor little Darfour apologized to me for his ignorance. He was stolen, he said, when he had only just begun to go to school. I wish an English or French servant could hear the instructions given by an Alim here to the serving men. How he would resent them! When thou hast tired out thy back, do not put thy hand behind it. Do not shirk the burden. Remember that thou art not only to obey, but to please thy master, whose bread thou eatest, and much more of the like. In short, a standard of religious obedience and fidelity fit for the highest Catholic idea of the religious life. Upon the few who seek instruction it does have an effect. I am sure Omar looks on his service as a religious duty, but of course they are few, and those who don't seek it themselves get none. It is curious how all children here are left utterly without any religious instruction. I don't know whether it is in consequence of this that they grow up so very devout. End of letter 107. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 108 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff Gordon, Boulak, July 29, 1867. Dearest Alick, your letter has arrived to my great relief. only I fear you are not at all well. About Maurice. If he wishes to see the Nile, let him come, but if he is only to be sent because of me, let it alone. I know I am oppressive company now, and am apt, like Mr. Woodhouse in Emma, to say, let us all have some gruel. We know nothing here of a prohibition of gunpowder. At this moment some Europeans are popping away incessantly at Embabeh just opposite. Evidently the Pasha wants to establish a right of search on the Nile. That absurd speech about slaves he made in Paris shows that. With 3,000 in his harem, several slave regiments, and lots of gangs on all his sugar plantations, his impudence is wonderful. He is himself the greatest living slave trader as well as owner. My lads are afraid to go out alone for fear of being snapped up by cawasses and taken to the army or the sugar works. You will be sorry to hear that your stalwart friend Hassan has had 50 blows on each footsole and had to pay £6. He was taking 2 donkeys to Shepherd's Hotel before sunrise for a French lady and gentleman to go to the Pyramids, when a cawass met him, seized the donkeys, and on Hassan's refusal to give them up, spat on the side saddle and reviled Hassan's own harem and began to beat him with his courbash. Hassan got impatient, took the cawass up in his arms and threw him on the ground, and went on. Presently 4 cawasses came after him, seized him and took him to the Zaptieh police office, where they all swore he had beaten them, torn their clothes, and robbed one of an imaginary gold watch, all valued at £24. After the beating he was carried to the prison in chains, and there sentenced to be a soldier. A friend, however, interfered and settled the matter for £6. Hassan sends you his best salam. Last night was very pretty, all the boats starting for the Moolid of Said el Bedawi at Tanta. Every boat had a sort of pyramid of lanterns, and the darweeshes chanted, and the worldly folks had profane music and singing, and I sat and looked and listened, and thought how many thousand years ago just the same thing was going on in honour of Bubastis. End of letter 108. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 109 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Bullock, August 7, 1867. My dearest Alec, 2 sailors of mine went last year to Paris in the dahabeah for the Empress and are just come back. When I see them I expect I shall have some fun out of their account of their journey. Poor Adam's father died of grief at his son's going. Nothing would persuade him that Adam would come back safe, and having a heart complaint he died. And now the lad is back, well and with fine clothes, but is much cut up, I hear, by his father's death. Please send me a tremendous whistle. Mine is not loud enough to wake Omar at the other end of the cabin. A boatswain's whistle or something in the line of the last trump is needed to wake sleeping Arabs. My pretty neighbour has gone back into the town. She was a nice little woman, and amused me a great deal. I see that a good, respectable Turkish harem is an excellent school of useful accomplishments, needlework, cookery, etc. But I observed that she did not care a bit for the Pasha, by whom she had a child, but was extremely fond of her lady, as she politely called her, also that like every Circassian I ever knew, she regarded being sold as quite a desirable fate, and did not seem sorry for her parents, as the negroes always are. The heat has been prodigious, but I am a good deal better. Yesterday the Nile had risen above 10 cubits, and the cutting of the Khalig took place. The river is pretty full now, but they say it will go down fast this year. I don't know why. It looks very beautiful, blood red and tossed into waves by the north wind fighting the rapid stream. Good-bye, dear Alick. I hope to hear a better account of your health soon. End of letter 109. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 110 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie Duff-Gordon. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Mrs. Austen, Bullock, August 8, 1867. Dearest Mother, 2 of my sailors were in Paris and have just come home. I hear they are dreadfully shocked by the dancing, and by the French women of the lower class generally. They sit in the coffee shops like shaers, poets, and tell of the wonders of Paris to admiring crowds. They are enthusiastic about the courtesy of the French police, who actually did not beat them when they got into a quarrel, but scolded the Frankish man instead, and accompanied them back to the boat quite politely. The novelty and triumph of not being beaten was quite intoxicating. There is such a curious sight of a crowd of men carrying huge blocks of stone up out of a boat. One sees exactly how the stones were carried in ancient times. They sway their bodies all together like one great lithe animal with many legs, and hum a low chant to keep time. It is quite unlike any carrying heavy weights in Europe. It is getting dusk and too windy for candles, so I must say good night and eat the dinner which Darfour has pressed upon me 2 or 3 times. He is a pleasant little creature, so lively and so gentle. It is washing day. I wish you could see Mabrook squatting out there, lathering away at the clothes with his superb black arms. He is a capital washer and a fair cook, but an utter savage. Editor's note: the foregoing letter reached England the day after the death of my grandmother, Mrs. Austen, which was a great shock to my mother and made her ill and unhappy, so it was settled that my brother Maurice should go out and spend the winter with her on the Nile. End of letter 110. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 111 of a Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Bulaq, September 7, 1867. Dearest Alec, many thanks for your letter and for all the trouble you have taken. I wish you were better. There is such a group all stitching away at the big new sail. Omar, the Rais, 2 or 3 volunteers, some old sailors of mine, and little Darfour. If I die, I think you must have that tiny nigger over. He is such a merry little soul. I am sure you would love him. He is quite a civilized being and has a charming temper, and he seems very small to be left alone in the world. I hope Maurice is not of the faction of the ennuyés of this generation. I am more and more of Omar's opinion, who said with a pleased sigh as we sat on the deck under some lovely palm trees in the bright moonlight, moored far from all human dwellings, how sweet are the quiet places of the world. I wonder when Europe will drop the absurd delusion about Christians being persecuted by Muslims. It is absolutely the other way, here at all events. The Christians know that they will always get backed by some consul or other, and it is the Muslims who go to the wall invariably. The brute of a patriarch is resolved to continue his persecution of the converts, and I was urged the other day by a sheykh to go to the Sheykh ul-Islam himself and ask him to demand equal rights for all religions, which is the law, on behalf of these Coptic Protestants. Everywhere the ulema have done what they could to protect them, even at Siout, where the American missionaries had caused them, the ulemas, a great deal of annoyance on a former occasion. No one in Europe can conceive how much the Copts have got the upper hand in the villages. They are backed by the government, and they know that the Europeans will always side with them. September 13th. Omar is crazy with delight at the idea of Maurice's arrival, and Rais Mohammed is planning what men to take who can make a fantasia, and not ask too much wages. Let me know what boat Maurice comes by, that I may send Omar to Alexandria to meet him. Omar begs me to give you and Siti Rainie his best salaam, and his assurance that he will take great care of the young master and keep him very tight. I think Maurice will be diverted with small Darfour. Mabrook now really cooks very fairly under Omar's orders, but he is beyond belief uncouth, and utters the wildest howls now that his voice is grown big and strong like himself. Moreover, he won't be spoken to, as our servants say, but he is honest, clean, and careful. I should not have thought any human creature could remain so completely a savage in a civilized community. I rather respect his savage hauteur, especially as it is combined with truth and honesty. End of letter 111. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 112 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie Duff-Gordon. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Boulac, Boat, Marie-Louise, October 17, 1867. Dearest Alick, you must not be wroth with me because I have not written for a long time. I have been ill, but am much better. Omar will go down to Alexandria to meet Maurice on Monday. My boat is being painted, but is nearly finished. As soon as it is done I shall move back into her. I got out into a little cangia, but it swarmed with bugs and wasps, and was too dirty, so I moved yesterday into a good boat belonging to a dragoman, and hope to be back in my own by Sunday. But oh Lord, I got a hold of the barber himself turned painter, and as the little cangia was moored alongside the Urania in order to hold all the mattresses, carpets, etc., I was his victim. First it was a request for £3 to buy paint. None but the best of paint is fitting for a noble person like thee, and that thou knowest is costly, and I am thy servant and would do thee honour. Very well, say I, take the money and see, O man, that the paint is of the best, or thy backsheesh will be bad also. Well, he begins and then rushes in to say, Come, O Bey, O Pasha, and behold the brilliancy of the white paint, like milk, like glass, like the full moon. I go and say, Mashallah, but now be so good as to work fast, for my son will be here in a few days, and nothing is ready. Fatal remark, Mashallah, Bismillah, may the Lord spare him, may God prolong thy days. Let me advise thee how to keep the eye from him, for doubtless thy son is beautiful as a memlook of 1,000 purses. Remember to spit in his face when he comes on board, and revile him aloud that all the people may hear thee, and compel him to wear torn and dirty clothes when he goes out. And how many children hast thou, and our master, thy master, is he well, etc., etc. Shukr Allah, all is well with us, say I, but by the Prophet, paint, O Ma'alim, exactly the German Meister, and do not break my head any more. But I was forced to take refuge at a distance from Hajj Ali's tongue. Read aloud the story of the barber, and you will know exactly what Ma'alim Hajj Ali is. And just as I got out of my boat and he had begun, the painter whom I had last year and with whom I was dissatisfied, went to the Sheykh of the painters and persuaded him to put my man in prison for working too cheap. That was at daybreak. So I sent my Rais to the Sheykh to inform him that if my man did not return by next day at daybreak, I would send for an European painter and force the Sheykh to pay the bill. Of course my man came. My steersman Hassan and a good man Hossein, who can wash and is generally nice and pleasant, arrived from El Bastoui a few days ago, and are waiting here till I want them. Poor little ugly black Hassan has had his house burnt down in his village, and lost all the clothes which he had bought with his wages. They were very good clothes, some of them, and a heavy loss. He is my Rais's brother, and a good man, clean and careful and quiet, better than my Rais even. They are a respectable family. Big stout Hazazin owes me 200 piastres which he is to work out, so I have still 5 men and a boy to get. I hope a nice boy, called Hedderby, the lizard, will come. They don't take pay till the day before we sail, except the Rais and Abdou Sadig, who are permanent. But Hassan and Hossein are working away as merrily as if they were paid. People growl at the baksheesh, but they should also remember what a quantity of service one gets for nothing here, and for which, oddly enough, no one dreams of asking baksheesh. Once a week we shift the anchors, for fear of their silting over, and 6 or 8 men work for an hour, then the mast is lowered, 12 or 14 men work at this, and nobody gets a farthing. The other day Omar met in the market an agreeable merchant, an Abyssinian fresh from his own country, which he had left because of the tyranny of Kassa, alias Todorus, the Sultan. The merchant had brought his wife and concubines to live here. His account is that the mass of the people are delighted to hear that the English are coming to conquer them, as they hope, and that everyone hates the king except 200 or 300 scamps who form his bodyguard. He had seen the English prisoners, who he says are not ill-treated but certainly in danger, as the king is with difficulty restrained from killing them by the said scamps, who fear the revenge of the English, also that there is one woman imprisoned with the native female prisoners. Hassan, the donkey boy, when he was marmiton in Cairo, knew the Sultan Todorus. He was the only man who could be found to interpret between the King of Abyssinia and Mohammed Ali Pasha, whom Todorus had come to visit. The merchant also expressed a great contempt for the Patriarch, and for their Matram or Metropolitan, whom the English papers call the Abuna. Abuna is Arabic for our father. The man is a Cairene Copt, and was a hanger-on of 2 English missionaries (they were really Germans) here, and he is more than commonly a rascal and a hypocrite. I know a respectable Jew whom he had robbed of all his merchandise, only Ras Ali forced the Matram to disgorge. Pray, what was all that nonsense about the Armenian Patriarch of Jerusalem writing to Todorus? What could he have to do with it? The Coptic Patriarch, whose place is Cairo, could do it if he were forced. At last my boat is finished, so tomorrow Omar will clean the windows, and on Saturday move in the cushions, etc., and me, and on Sunday go to Alexandria. I hear the dreadful voice of Hajj Ali the painter outside, and will retire before he gets to the cabin door, for fear he should want to bore me again. I do hope Maurice will enjoy his journey, everyone is anxious to please him. The Sheykh of the Hawara sent his brother to remind me to stop at his palace near Girgeh, that he might make a fantasia for my son. So Maurice will see real Arab riding, and Jereed, and sheep roasted whole and all the rest of it. The Sheykh is the last of the great Arab chieftains of Egypt, and has thousands of fellaheen and a large income. He did it for Lord Spencer and for the Duke of Rutland, and I shall get as good a fantasia, I have no doubt. Perhaps at Keneh Maurice had better not see the dancing, for Zeyneb and Latifa are terribly fascinating, they are such pleasant, jolly girls, as well as pretty and graceful, but old es Zayn, Mother of Beauty, so called on account of his hideousness, will want us to eat his good dinner. End of letter 112. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 113 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie Duff-Gordon. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Urania, Boulak, October 21, 1867. Dearest Alick, so many thanks for the boxes and their contents. My slaves are enchanted with all that the great master has sent. Darfour hugged the horsecloth in ecstasy that he should never again be cold at night. The waistcoats of printed stuff, and the red flannel shirts are gone to be made up, so my boys will be like Pashas this winter, as they told the Rais. He is awfully perturbed about the evil eye. Thy boat, mashallah, is such as to carry envy from all beholders. Now when they see a son with thee, Bismillah, mashallah, like a flower, verily, I fear greatly from the eye of the people. We have bought a tambourine and a tarbuka, and are on the lookout for a man who can sing well, so as to have fantasia on board. October 22nd. I hear today that the Pasha sent a telegram, Host eigenhandig, to Kous, in consequence whereof one Stephanos, an old Copt of high character, many years in government employ, was put in chains and hurried off within 20 minutes to Fazoglo with 2 of his friends, for no other crime than having turned Presbyterian. This is quite a new idea in Egypt, and we all wonder why the Pasha is so anxious to brush the coat of the Copt Patriarch. We also hear that the people up in the Said are running away by wholesale, utterly unable to pay the new taxes and to do the work exacted. Even here the beating is fearful. My Rais has had to send all his month's wages to save his aunt and his sister-in-law, both widows, from the Kourbash. He did not think so much of the blows, but of the shame. Those are women, lone women. From whence can they get the money? End of letter 113. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 114 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie Duff-Gordon. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Mrs. Ross, Boulak, November 3, 1867. Dearest Janet, Maurice arrived on Friday week, and is as happy as can be. He says he never felt so well, and never had such good snipe shooting. Little Darfour's amusement at Maurice is boundless. He grins at him all the time he waits at table. He marvels at his dirty boots, at his bathing, at his much walking out shooting, at his knowing no Arabic. The dike burst the other day up Bahr Yussuf, and we were nearly all swept away by the furious rush of water. My little boat was upset while 3 men in her were securing the anchor, and 2 of them were nearly drowned, though they swim like fish. All the dahabeahs were rattled and pounded awfully, and in the middle of the fracas, at noonday, a steamer ran into us quite deliberately. I was rather frightened when the steamer bumped us, and carried away the iron supports of the awning, and they cursed our fathers into the bargain, which I thought needless. The English have fallen into such contempt here, that one no longer gets decent civility from anything in the Miri (government). Olagnier has sent us a lovely little skiff, and I have had her repaired and painted, so Maurice is set up for shooting and boating. Darfour calls him the son of a crocodile, because he loves the water, and generally delights in him hugely, and all my men are enchanted with him. End of letter 114. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 115 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Luxor, December 20th, 1867. Dearest Alick, we arrived here all safe 3 days ago. I think of starting for Nubia directly after Christmas Day, which we must keep here. We have lovely weather. Maurice is going with a friend of my friends, a Bedawi, to shoot. I hope among the Ababda he will get some gazelle shooting. I shall stop at Saïla to visit the Sheikh's mother, and with them Maurice could go for some days into the desert. As to crocodiles, inshallah, we will eat their hearts, and not they ours. You may rely on it that Maurice is on the head and in the eye of all of my crew, and will not be allowed to bathe in unclean places. Rais Mohammed stopped him at Gebed Abdul Foda. You would be delighted to see how different he looks, all his clothes are too tight now. He says he is thoroughly happy, and that he was never more amused than when with me, which I think very flattering. Half of the old house at Luxor fell down into the temple beneath 6 days before I arrived, so there is an end of the Maison de France, I suppose. It might be made very nice again at a small expense, but I suppose the consul will not do it, and certainly I shall not unless I want it again. Nothing now remains solid but the 3 small front rooms and the big hall with 2 rooms off it. All the part I lived in is gone, and the steps, so one cannot get in. Luckily Yussuf had told Mohammed to move my little furniture into the part which is solid, having a misgiving of the rest. He has the most exquisite baby, an exact miniature of himself. He is in a manner my godson, being named Noor ed Din Hishan Abu el Hajjaj, to be called Noor like me. End of letter 115. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 116 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, on board the Urania, January 1868. Dearest Alick, your letter of the 10th December most luckily came on to Edfu by the American Consul General, who overtook us there in his steamer and gave me a lunch. Maurice was, as usual, up to his knees in a distant swamp trying to shoot wild geese. Now we are up close to Aswan, and there are no more marshes, but en revanche there are quails and kata, the beautiful little sand grouse. I eat all Maurice shoots, which I find very good for me, and as for Maurice he has got back his old round boyish face. He eats like an ogre, walks all day, sleeps like a top, bathes in the morning and has laid on flesh so that his clothes won't button. At Esna we fell in with handsome Hassan, who is now Sheikh of the Ababda, as his elder brother died. He gave us a letter to his brother at Saïla, up in Nubia, ordering him to get up a gazelle hunt for Maurice, and I am to visit his wife. I think it will be pleasant, as the Bedouin women don't veil or shut up, and to judge by the men ought to be very handsome. Both Hassan and Abu Gourd, who was with him, preached the same sermon as my learned friend Abu Rahman had done at Luxor, Why, in God's name, had I left my son without a wife? They are sincerely shocked at such indifference to a son's happiness. Aswan, 10 Ramadan. I have no almanac, but you will be able to know the date by your own red pocket-book, which determined the beginning of Ramadan at Luxor this year. They received a telegram fixing it for Thursday, but Sheykh Yussuf said that he was sure the astronomers in London knew best, and made it Friday. Tomorrow we shall make our bargain, and next day go up the cataract, inshallah, in safety. The water is very good, as Jesus the black pilot tells me. He goes to the second cataract and back, as I intend to stay nearly 2 months in Nubia. The weather here is perfect now. We have been lucky in having a lovely mild winter hitherto. We are very comfortable with a capital crew, who are all devoted to Maurice. The Sheykh of the Ababda has promised to join us if he can, when he has convoyed some 400 Bashi Bazouks up to Wadi Halfa, who are being sent up because the English are in Abyssinia. End of letter 116. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 117 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Luxor, April 1868. Dearest Alec, I have been too weak to write, but the heat set in 3 days ago and took away my cough, and I feel much better. Maurice also flourishes in the broil, and protests against moving yet. He speaks a good deal of Arabic and is friends with everyone. It is Salam Aleikum ya Maurice on all sides. A Belgian has died here, and his 2 slaves, a very nice black boy and an Abyssinian girl, got my little valet, Darfour, to coax me to take them under my protection, which I have done, as there appeared a strong probability that they would be annexed by a rascally Copt who is a consular agent at Kenna. I believe the Belgian has left money for them, which of course they would never get without some one to look after it, and so I have Ramadan, the boy, with me, and shall take the girl when I go, and carry them both to Cairo, settle their little business, and let them present a sealed-up book which they have to their consul there, according to their master's desire, and then marry the girl to some decent man. I have left her in Mustapha's harem till I go. I enjoyed Nubia immensely, and longed to go and live with the descendants of a great Ras, head, chief, who entertained me at Ibrim, and who said, like Ravenswood, "Thou art come to a fallen house, and there is none to serve thee left save me." It was a paradise of a place, and the Nubian had the grand manners of a very old, proud nobleman. I had a letter to him from Sheykh Yussuf. Since I wrote the above it has turned quite chilly again, so we agreed to stay till the heat really begins. Maurice is so charmed with Luxor that he does not want to go, and we mean to let the boat and live here next winter. I think another week will see us start down stream. Janet talks of coming up the Nile with me next year, which would be pleasant. I am a little better than I have been the last 2 months. I was best in Nubia, but I got a cold at Esna, second hand from Maurice, which made me very seedy. I cannot go about at all for want of breath. Could you send me a chair such as people are carried in by 2 men? A common chair is awkward for the men when the banks are steep, and I am nervous, so I never go out. I wish you could see your son bare-legged and footed, in a shirt and a pair of white Arab drawers, rushing about with the fellaheen. He is everybody's brother or son. End of letter 117. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 118 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Minia, May 1868. Dearest Alec, we are just arriving at Minia, whence the railway will take letters quickly. We dined at Kenna and at Siout with some friends, and had fantasia at Kenna. Omar desires his dutiful salams to you, and hopes you will be satisfied with the care he has taken of the child. How you would have been amused to hear the girl who came to dance for us at Esna lecture Maurice about evil ways, but she was an old friend of mine, and gave good and sound advice. Everyone is delighted about Abyssinia. Thank God our Pasha will fear the English more than before, and the Sultan also, and when I lamented the expense, they all exclaimed, 'Never mind the expense, it is worth more than 10 millions to you. Your faces are whitened and your power enlarged before all the world, but why don't you take us on your way back?' I saw a very interesting man at Keneh, one Faam, a Copt, who has turned Presbyterian, and has induced 100 others at Koos to do likewise. An American missionary is their minister. Faam was sent off to the Soudan by the Patriarch, but brought back. He is a splendid old fellow, and I felt I looked on the face of a Christian martyr, a curious sight in the 19th century. The calm, fearless, rapt expression was like what you see in noble old Italian pictures, and he had the perfect absence of doing pious which shows the undoubting faith. He and the Mufti, also a noble fellow, sparred about religion in a jocose and friendly tone which would be quite unintelligible in Exeter Hall. When he was gone, the Mufti said, 'Ah, we thank them, for though they know not the truth of Islam, they are good men, and walk straight, and would die for their religion. Their example is excellent. Praise be to God for them.'" End of letter 118. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 119 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie Duff-Gordon. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Boulak, June 14, 1868. Dearest Alick, the climate has been odious for Egypt. To shiver in cold winds of June on the Nile seems hard. Maurice inherits my faculty for getting on with damned niggers. All the crew kiss him on both cheeks, and swore to come back again in the winter, and up the country he was hand and glove with all the fellaheen, eating a good deal of what he called muck with great enjoyment, walking arm in arm with a crazy darweesh, fetching home a bride at night and swearing lustily by the Prophet. The good manners of the Arab canaille have rubbed off the very disagreeable varnish which he got at Brussels. Dr. Patterson wants me to go to Beyrout or one of the Greek Isles for a change. I am very feeble and short of breath, but I will try the experiment. Would you be shocked if a nigger taught Maurice? One Haji Daboos I know to be a capital Arabic scholar, and he speaks French like a Parisian, and Italian also, only he is a real nigger and so is the best music master in Cairo. Que faire? It's not catching, as Lady Morley said, and I won't present you with a young mulatto any more than with a young brave Belge. I may, however, find someone at Beyrout. Cairo is in such a state of beggary that all educated young men have fled. Maurice has no sort of idea why a nigger should not be as good as anyone else, but thinks perhaps you might not approve. You would have stared to see old Achmet Aga Abd el Sadeg, a very good friend of ours at Assouan, coaxing and patting the Weled boy when he dined here the other day, and laughing immoderately at Maurice's nonsense. He is one of the M.P.s for Assouan, and a wealthy and much respected man in the Saeed. The Abyssinian affair is an awful disappointment to the Pasha. He had laid his calculations for something altogether different, and is furious. The Coptic clergy are ready to murder us. The Arabs are all in raptures. God bless the English general, he has frightened our Pasha. Giafar Pasha bakshished me an abaya of crimson silk and gold, also a basket of coffee. I was obliged to accept them, as he sent his son with them, and to refuse would have been an insult, and as he is the one Turk I do think highly of, I did not wish to affront him. It was at Luxor on his way to Khartoum. He also invited Maurice to Khartoum, and proposed to send a party to fetch him from Korosko on the Nile. Giafar is Viceroy of the Soudan, and a very quiet man who does not eat the people. My best love to Janet. I'll write soon to her, but I am lazy and Maurice is worse. Omar nearly cried when Maurice went to Alexandria for a week. I seem to feel how dull we shall be without him when he goes away for good, said he, and Darfour expresses his intention of going with Maurice. Thou must give me to the young man bakshish, as he puts it, because I have plenty of sense and shall tell him what to do. That is the little rascal's sauce. Terence's slaves are true to the life here. End of letter 119. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 120 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie Duff-Gordon. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Boulak, October 22nd, 1868. Dearest Alec, the unlucky journey to Syria almost cost me my life. The climate is absolute poison to consumptive people. In 10 days after I arrived, the doctor told me to settle my affairs, for I had probably only a few days to live, and certainly should never recover. However, I got better, and was carried on board the steamer, but am too weak for anything. We were nearly shipwrecked coming back, owing to the Russian captain having his bride on board and not minding his ship. We bumped and scraped and rolled very unpleasantly. At Beirut the Sisters of Charity wouldn't nurse a Protestant, nor the Prussians a non-Lutheran. But Omar and Darfour nursed me better than Europeans ever do. Little Blackie was as sharp about the physic as a born doctor's boy when Omar was taking his turn of sleep. I did not like the few Syrians I saw at all. End of letter 120, read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 121 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie Duff-Gordon. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Boulak, November 6, 1868. Dearest Alec, I am sure you will rejoice to hear that I am really better. I now feel so much like living on a bit longer that I will ask you to send me a cargo of medicines. I didn't think it worth while before to ask for anything to be sent to me that could not be forwarded to Hades, but my old body seems very tough, and I fancy I still have 1 or 2 of my 9 lives left. I hope to sail in a very few days. Maurice is going up to Cairo, so I send this by him. Yesterday was little Rainie's birthday, and I thought very longingly of her. The photo of Leighton's sketch of Janet I like very much. End of letter 121, read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 122 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie Duff-Gordon. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Aswan, January 25, 1869. Dearest Alec, we have been here 10 days, and I find the air quite the best for me. I cough much less, only I am weak and short of breath. I have got a most excellent young Rais for my boat, and a sailor who sings like a nightingale. Indeed, he is not a sailor at all, but a professional Cairo singer who came up with me for fun. He draws crowds to hear him, and at Esneh the congregation prayed for me in the mosque, that God might reward me for the pleasure I had provided for them. Fancy desiring the prayers of this congregation for the welfare of the lady who gave me her opera box last Saturday. If prayers could avail to cure, I ought to get well rapidly. At Luxor Omar killed the sheep he had vowed, and Mustafa and Mohammed each killed 2, as thank offerings for my life, and all the darweeshes held 2 great zikirs in a tent pitched behind the boat, and drummed and chanted and called on the Lord for 2 whole nights, and every man in my boat fasted Ramadan severely, from Omar and the crew to the little boys. I think Darfour was the most meritorious of all, because he has such a gargantuan appetite, but he fasted his 30 days bravely and rubbed his little nose in the dust energetically in prayer. On Christmas Day I was at Esneh. It was warm and fine, and I made fantasia and had the girls to dance. Zeyneb and Hilalea claimed to be my own special Gazawi, so to speak, my ballerine de camera, and they did their best. How I did long to transport the whole scene before your eyes, Ramadan warbling intense love songs, and beating on a tiny tambourine, while Zeyneb danced before him and gave the pantomime to his song, and the sailors and girls and respectable merchants sat pell-mell all around on the deck, and the player on the rabab drew from it a wail like that of Isis for dead Osiris. I never quite know whether it is now or 4,000 years ago, or even 10,000, when I am in the dreamy intoxication of a real Egyptian fantasia. Nothing is so antique as the Gazawi, the real dancing girls. They are still subject to religious ecstasies of a very curious kind, no doubt inherited from the remotest antiquity. Ask any learned pundit to explain to you the Czar, it is really curious. Now that I am too ill to write, I feel very sorry that I did not persist and write on the beliefs of Egypt, in spite of your fear that the learned would cut me up, for I honestly believe that knowledge will die with me which few others possess. You must recollect that the learned know books, and I know men, and what is still more difficult, women. The cataract is very bad this year, owing to want of water in the Nile, and to the shameful conduct of the Maōhn here. The cataract men came to me, and prayed me to give them my voice before the Moudir, which I will do. Allah Eddin Bey seems a decent man and will perhaps remove the rascal, whose robberies on travellers are notorious, and his oppression of the poor savages who pull the boats up odious. 2 boats have been severely damaged, and my friend the Rais of the Cataract, the one I threatened to shoot last year and who has believed in me ever since, does not advise me to go up, though he would take me for nothing, he swears, if I wished. So, as the air is good here and Maurice is happy with his companions, I will stay here. I meant to have discharged my men, but I have grown so fond of them, having so good a set, that I can't bring myself to save £20 by turning them adrift when we are all so happy and comfortable, and the poor fellows are just marrying new wives with their wages. Good-bye, dearest Alick, forgive a scrawl, for I am very weak all over, fingers and all. Best love to my darling Rainey. 3 boats have little girls of 5 to 8 on board, and I do envy them so. I think Maurice had better go home to you when we get to Cairo. He ought to be doing something. End of letter 122. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 123 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie DUFF-GORDON. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Boulak, June 15, 1869. Dearest Alick, do not think of coming here. Indeed, it would be almost too painful to me to part from you again, and as it is, I can patiently wait for the end among people who are kind and loving enough to be comfortable, without too much feeling of the pain of parting. The leaving Luxor was rather a distressing scene, as they did not think to see me again. The kindness of all the people was really touching, from the Cadi who made ready my tomb among his own family, to the poorest fellaheen. Omar sends you his most heartfelt thanks, and begs that the boat may remain registered at the consulate in your name for his use and benefit. The prince has appointed him his own dragoman. But he is sad enough, poor fellow, all his prosperity does not console him for the loss of the mother he found in the world. Mohammed at Luxor wept bitterly, and said, Poor I, poor my children, poor all the people, and kissed my hand passionately, and the people at Esneh asked leave to touch me for a blessing, and everyone sent delicate bread and their best butter and vegetables and lambs. They are kinder than ever now that I can no longer be of any use to them. If I live till September I will go up to Esneh, where the air is softest and I cough less. I would rather die among my own people in the Saeed than here. You must forgive this scrawl, dearest. Don't think, please, of sending Maurice out again. He must begin to work now, or he will never be good for anything. Can you thank the Prince of Wales for Omar, or shall I write? He was most pleasant and kind, and the Princess too. She is the most perfectly simple-mannered girl I ever saw. She does not even try to be civil like other great people, but asks blunt questions, and looks at one so heartily with her clear, honest eyes that she must win all hearts. They are more considerate than any people I have seen, and the Prince, instead of being gracious, was, if I may say so, quite respectful in his manner. He is very well bred and pleasant, and has the honest eyes that makes one sure he has a kind heart. My sailors were so proud at having the honour of rowing him in our own boat, and of singing to him. I had a very good singer in the boat. Please send some little present for my Rais. He is such a good man, he will be pleased at some little thing from you. He is half Turk, and seems like whole one. Maurice will have told you all about us. Good-bye for the present, dearest Alick. End of letter 123. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letter 124 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie Duff-Gordon. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Sir Alexander Duff-Gordon, Helwan, opposite Bedrashane, July 9, 1869. Dearest Alec, don't make yourself unhappy, and don't send out a nurse. And above all, don't think of coming. I am nursed as well as possible. My 2 Raises, Ramadan and Yusuf, are strong and tender, and Omar is as admirable as ever. The worst is, I am so strong. I repeat, I could not be better cared for anywhere than by my good and loving crew. Tell Maurice how they all cried, and how Abd el-Halim forswore drink and hashish. He is very good too, but my Raises are incomparable. God bless you. I wish I had seen your dear face once more, but not now. I would not have you here now on any account. End of Letter 124. End of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie Duff-Gordon. Read by Sibella Denton in Carrollton, Georgia, for LibriVox.org. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org.